When you think of an airline, you think of the big things. But our days are built around what's small, too. And for the last year, we've all been dealing with the biggest thing yet. A virus we can't even see. So as you return to the world, we're making sure you do so safely. Bringing you where you want to go, and vaccines where they need to be. Doing little things like wearing masks to keep you healthy. And larger ones, like putting people before profit. In ways big and small, the world has changed, but our commitment to getting you safely out in it, that never will.
Hello, I'm Mohammed Nathiri, and I'm the National Chairman for Economic Empowerment. I welcome you to Workforce Development and Investment Capital, how we can economically empower our community. The focus of this workshop is to figure out how we can use the tools that we have within the 100 to take our community where it needs to go and where we deserve to go. Before we get started, I want to thank Chairman Dortch, Vice Chairman Dotson, and the National Board. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to set the vision that we have for economic empowerment. I also want to thank the National Economic Empowerment Committee members, Larry Allen out of Dallas-Fort Worth, Judah Rajaje out of Philadelphia, Lee Fields out of Cleveland, Reginald Grant out of Charlotte, Kenneth Harris out of Little Rock, Adrian Howard out of Dallas-Fort Worth, Lionel Jenkins out of Long Beach, Thomas Stith out of Triangle East, and Daniel Williams out of Beaumont. Without your dedicated work, our committee would not be in position for the plans we have for the upcoming year. Finally, I want to give a special thanks to the advisory work of Milton Jones, the National Treasurer. Milton, your advice and insight has been most welcomed and really appreciated. With that, let's go ahead and get to the topic at hand. So today, I want to focus on really kind of four ways to look at this. Let's start with the twin paths. Workforce development and investment capital can't be treated separately. Our committee believes that both are integral to what needs to be done for our community. The way we look at it is workforce development is really the kind of the pipeline work. It's the way that you bring the folks that you need to have for employment and eventual entrepreneurship through a pipeline of training and job creation. We've got a number of partnerships that we'll talk about a little later on as examples of the way this could actually happen. And then investment capital, that's really kind of the missing link for a lot of our businesses in the community. How you get to friends and family level of money, and how you kind of sit here and say, I have a business that's ready to move to the next stage. How do I access investment capital that has previously not been available to me? Going back to workforce development, we look at it as addressing multiple issues. We talked about skill development and employment opportunities earlier on. But we also want to not forget about career advancement. A lot of the partnerships that we are looking at doing within the 100 and specifically within economic empowerment deal with career advancement as much as they deal with employment opportunities for some of our younger community members. And again, as I mentioned before, the investment capital that we want to talk about is really kind of that friends and family level, where it's for the early startup or for early round financing when you have a business that's ready to move on, but doesn't have the capital available to it. So let's go ahead and get into workforce development. How do we go about doing this? There are a number of ways that we can actually look at instituting this within our chapter and within the organization at a larger level. First thing is really kind of understand your chapter's community. We've got 102 chapters around the world, mostly in the US. In each of our communities, while they're similar, we all have slightly different identities. You have, regional and geographic and industrial differences, things that provide slightly different and unique characteristics to your community. So how do we do that? As an example, I want to look at two things. First, schools. depending on where you are and how your community works, you have a mix of colleges, both 2 and 4 year, and then you also have trade schools as well. And then on top of all that, you'll have a bunch of training programs that can either be tied to employers or it can be tied to actual community groups and organizations. In the Bay Area, for example, we have a number of trade groups that focus on our community that are not necessarily tied to any particular college or employer, but they act as feeders into colleges and employers based on the curriculum that they employ. And then the second thing is actual employment and trade opportunities. There's one particular program that we're going to talk about toward the end of this seminar. But what we've noticed is that a number of employers have opportunities for training and eventual employment opportunities for both high school graduates and college graduates, and then in some cases, folks who are already in the trades and are looking to move around. And then finally, within the trade opportunities themselves, you've got partnership opportunities with unions. You have partnership opportunities with trade groups, et cetera. And that gets us to those partnership opportunities. Not only do you have organizations that are historically focused on trade development and workforce development and skill enhancement, you have a number of folks who already partner with the 100 on a local level and on a national level, who are sitting here saying, how do we go beyond just giving money? How do we go beyond just making an economic donation to the 100, whether at the chapter level or at the national level? And how do we start making some real impact? And what we're seeing is a lot of these organizations and companies and sponsors are looking to partner and marry the money that they provide to the 100, well, again, whether it's at a chapter or a national level, and actually marry that to actual opportunities. So as an example, you have Home Depot, who we'll talk about in a little more detail. They're saying, we don't want to just give you money. We also want to create a training program for folks who want to come in. You have Coca-Cola on local chapter levels who have said, not only are we giving money, we also want to provide internship opportunities. And that, again, is another aspect of workforce development that we can take advantage of, both, again, at a chapter level and at a national level. When you're looking at opportunities as well, we talked about this again in an earlier seminar where we're talking about grants and how you make sure you take advantage of grants that are available to you. Some things are universal when it comes to working with partnerships. First thing is you want to make sure that you have the actual ability, your chapter has the ability to honor the longer term commitment. So these opportunities, as promising as they are, they require a long-term commitment, because you're talking about training and development, which is a multi-year process. This is not a 3 weeks, somebody goes in, gets the training they need, gets the certification they need, and goes out and gets a job. These are longer term programs. As you work with, whether it's a local group that's focused on this or an organization or a company that is making this a priority, they are sitting here saying, we want to provide some sort of certification, or at least get some sort of guarantee, as much as you can, that the skills that the person who's participating in the program gain, making sure that those are skills that are beneficial to getting a job and advancing through their career. So we're talking about a multi-year commitment that we're talking about with many of these opportunities. So you want to make sure that you've identified the folks in your chapter and that are going to lead and make this happen. And then also lean on the partnerships that you have as well. As much as the chapter and the national organization is going to have obligations and requirements that they have to meet, you want to make sure you put some of those back onto the partners as well. You want to sit here and say, hey, don't just make an internship available to us. Help us develop the student or the individual who's in this internship into someone who has the skills they need. So that way you're able to rely on the partner's infrastructure as well. So you're not just sitting here saying the chapter has to carry the brunt of the work. And again, we want to talk about leveraging these relationships. So again, as I was just saying, leaning on the partners, you also want to leverage the funding as well. These programs in many states, there's no such thing as a unpaid internship anymore. Everything needs to be paid. And what you can do is you can partner with funding sources and other relationships that you have to figure out how you don't how your chapter does not have to take on the brunt and the bulk of the financial obligation. It's I don't want to presume anything about kind of where your chapter is located, but I do know that there are many different opportunities and ways to make this work. So I would encourage you to explore all the opportunities that are available to you when it comes to funding and supporting these internships and other training opportunities that you might have. Now, investment capital is, again, it's the second piece of how we, what we're looking at talking about here today. And this is a little trickier. Historically, our community, the Black community, has had to rely on debt. So you're talking about banks, you're talking about, credit unions, other lending sources of lending. So what you end up doing is you end up not necessarily building out your investment, your equity base. You're sitting here saying, how do we just basically borrow money to get this venture off the ground? And that limits your flexibility because, as you all know, you're immediately attacking your cash flow because you have a debt service obligation that you have to meet, or you just simply lose everything, as opposed to having an equity investment base that shares in your growth and allows you the room and the space you need to grow and develop your business without having to sit here and say, I have to do this current pay to this debt source. So historically, what's been a limitation to this? Well, the first thing I would say is many of the metrics that are used to identify investment opportunities for small businesses don't necessarily match up with what our community has. For example, many of the business owners in the community don't have the financial capacity that some of the other business owners in other communities might have, both individually and through their families and their networks. So you're sitting here saying, all of a sudden, that's a metric that can't be met. Other issues are just kind of the community that many of our businesses serve. They just aren't understood. And much like if you can think way back to when Starbucks first got into the Black community, kind of through Magic Johnson and whatnot. Before then, people just didn't appreciate the amount of money that our community had to spend on businesses. And they just assumed that we would just leave and go to another community and spend that money, as opposed to sitting here saying, hey, we can actually invest and locate our businesses in this community and be successful. That mindset translates to Black businesses in the community. Just might not understand the customer base of a particular Black business, not understand the growth and the income potential, and therefore you have an investment gap. Finally, I would say, I think there's just a general misunderstanding of what we have in our own community as it stands. I'm sure as you look around your chapter, you realize that there are a number of members in the chapters that are professional investors, professional accredited investors. They're used to putting in 10, 50, 100, maybe even $250,000, in some cases 7 figures, into a startup environment, and understand how that growth happens and understand what their investment means. We in Economic Empowerment believe that there's an opportunity to directly link these investors to businesses in our community. Again, we think there's an opportunity to take existing investors in our community, folks who are investing in other ventures actively, who have capital to deploy. We think there's a way to directly link them to businesses in our community. And we think the linkage is very powerful. You have people who are investing, who understand the community because they're from the community, investing into businesses in the community. So you have almost a double bottom line or an implied double bottom line opportunity here where you can make money. There's an opportunity to make money, but then there is a tie, a link, just a feeling of obligation that, we should do everything that we can to help our community, obviously within certain risk parameters. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Well, one, again, we identify the investors. I think that is something that we can do on a local level, international level. We all have relationships. We just, we start going in and saying, hey, who do we know who does this kind of work? Who is, whatever they do for their professional lives, whether they're, bankers or doctors or whatnot, or if they just happen to have a family office because they've done really well for themselves and they're looking to deploy capital. Let's tap into those folks. Let's reach out to them. Say we have a structure. We have a structure within which you can start to look to invest into businesses in our community. The second piece, though, is to actually start identifying businesses. And this is where I think the 100 has the most opportunity when you look at just kind of this whole industry, where it's going. We're in 102, we have 102 chapters. I think that's across, 60 or 70 cities if you kind of account for a number of cities having multiple chapters. That gives us incredible reach. We are, in a lot of ways, the best prepared folks to identify what businesses in our community are ready to take the next steps. And what that means is, I'm not saying that we have to personally know every business, but if we get the word out, folks will come to us. So whether that means we hold individual community seminars, or we just kind of have an RFP process where we put out the word and say, hey, if you want to come in, please let us know. That's the first thing. Just identify the businesses that say they are ready to take the next step. The second thing is, we don't just put the businesses in front of these investors. I mean, that's another thing that a lot of other communities don't have that issue. They come with advisory services and support. So when they go and are ready to receive investment, they have a pitch deck ready. They have their professional presentation prepared. So they understand what their investors are looking to do. They understand what's important to their investors, what metrics they need to show that they're ready. That's what we need to do with these businesses as well. Support them so that they're able to put the presentations together and get everything ready to get everything prepared to make their pitch. And then once you identify those businesses, get them ready to do the pitch, that's when you bring them together. Now, how do you do that? There are a number of ways we can do it. You can have some sort of summit. You can have, when I was president of the Bay Area chapter, one thing we did is at our quarterly, at our membership meetings, we had one or two companies come in and present. They would present so we'd get the word out saying this is a special meeting. After our membership meeting, we're going to have an actual investment presentation from one or two companies. So at that point, a number of members who don't necessarily show up to the membership meetings, but are active members, would show up to that, and it'd be a different type of meeting, because this is really a pitch. We had our economic empowerment committee would go through, and they'd identify and would have already vetted the companies. They help them with the presentation, so the presentations are standardized. So that's another thing; they're standardized, so that you're able to sit here and talk to an investment community in the same way. So all these businesses are, as much as they can be, looked at as apples to apples. And then we'd have them present. And then after that presentation, members who were interested in learning more about a particular business, we'd have follow-on meetings with those companies individually. And we go to we either go to their factory or their warehouse, we go to their store, whatever their business was, we go there. And then we'd have another 1 or 2 hour really kind of directed meeting with that business. And it doesn't always work out, because not everybody's fully ready for this. But what it does do is it gets investors used to the idea of, hey, I'm a Black investor. Yes, I invest in other startups, but let me look at some of these startups in my own community and let me get my mind ready to do that. And then you get these other businesses ready to identify themselves for opportunities and get themselves ready to go ahead and be ready to present. The last thing I want to talk about is how we take this local effort and create a national model. That's what economic empowerment is most interested in doing, creating a national model that can go both backwards and forwards, meaning we can go from a local level up and we can go from national level down, because we have some relationships that are national that allow us to really kind of distill that through the chapters. But then we have some incredible opportunities that are happening locally because of the way the economies and various regions and geographies work that can flow up nationally. So want to use, again, we talked about Home Depot, want to use their HBI initiative as an example. So the current chair of the Bay Area chapter, Chuck Baker, developed a relationship with Home Depot and helped craft their HBI initiative, which is a training program that results in a certification for the folks who go through the program. And that means they can get a job either at Home Depot or some other shop that does similar work. And the certification as a benefit, or as a bonus rather, the certification actually provides a kind of a stamp that this person has a skill set that can go and they can work for a contractor, they can work for engineering firms because they have a certain skill set. So this is something that was developed and it's being rolled out across multiple chapters. And that's an example of a partnership that started locally, was expanded and scaled up to go across multiple chapters. So now this is really a national, it's really a national model. And when we look at other opportunities, as an example, there's a partnership that we're working on with Guava Bank out of New York. Now, Guava is an online bank, right? But what we're able to do in the 100 is we're able to sit here and say, hey, we're in 102. We have 102 chapters. Every community that Guava Bank, again, Guava is focusing on the Black community, trying to provide access to capital for the Black community specifically. Every community you probably want to look at, we're already in. Every community that's important for you as a growth opportunity, we're already working with. We have relationships, existing relationships with businesses, with individuals. This is another type of example that we have of a partnership that can be developed that will allow us to provide the support and the structuring that we need for our communities, both again on a workforce development front and on an investment front. Second thing that we want to talk about is, and this is national, this builds on what I was talking about in the previous slide, a 100 investment summit, and this would be a national summit. So the idea is we have 102 chapters, some subset of that chapter grouping are having, whether periodic, whether it's semi-annual, whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly, having these types of seminars on a local level where they are identifying investment opportunities through companies, meaning they're finding local companies that are ready to take that next step, and they're pairing them and partnering them with local investors that have sat here and said, whether they're members of the chapter or just members of the community who are, again, prepared for this. Again, we in the Bay, we were leaning on accredited investors. We wanted to make sure that they were actually legally recognized as being credible and accredited investors. But on a local level, you put those together. The idea is let's try to scale that up. And businesses that have been identified at a local level, how about we sit here and say, okay, so you've identified some business at a local level. How can we then take some of the more powerful businesses, the ones that are ready to take maybe an additional step or ready to take a bigger step? How do we partner, put them together with investors that are on a larger scale as well? So if we're sitting here saying we're looking at investors that are put in 10 to 50 to 100,000 in on the local level, what if we could find a group of investors that are willing to put in, high 6 to low 7 figures into companies? How do we create an opportunity, an event where 8 to 10 companies on a national level? Imagine that 8 to 10 Black companies that have been identified nationally come to, a seminar that's on an annual basis. Maybe it's right before our national conference, and you have those businesses there. You have investors that come, call it 10 to 20 investors that are sitting here listening to these pitches. They're all on a 6 to 7 figure interest level. Now you're talking about what, $15-20 million of actual Black capital that can go to support Black businesses. Powerful idea. That's something that economic empowerment is really looking to roll out in 2022. But it can't really happen as successfully as we want it if we're not looking at it at a local level. We just, our chapters have just a reach and a depth on a local level that we can really use to identify someone for these larger ones. And then the last thing is really leveraging existing partnerships. We've got incredible partnerships with existing banks and other companies that can be expanded. Going back to Guava Bank, the work that we're doing, that we're looking to do to partner with Guava, can be done with Bank of America. It can be done with Chase. It can be done with Citibank. It can be done with any of the larger banks that have the same type of priorities and programs. All these banks have, workforce development programs or investment platform programs that we can take advantage of. And by taking the work that we're looking to do on our own and through specific partnerships that we've talked about before, there's no reason why we can't use that and say, hey, Wells Fargo, we've had this long-standing relationship with you. You've made it known that it's important for you to create access to capital opportunities for communities of color and developing communities. We have this relationship with Guava Bank as an example. We think we can do that with you. Let's figure out a way to make it work. And the idea is that at the end of the day, like we said at the bottom here, just leveraging everything the 100 brings to bear and making sure that translates into increased opportunities for our community. What that will mean is that we'll have our community be a fully functioning, independent participant in the U.S. economy, like any other community is. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to. Now, with that, I want to close out. I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Again, thank you to the board. I want to say thank you to all of you all doing all the on-the-ground work that makes everything that we're talking about, all this visioning, powerful, and making it positive and making it possible. So I want to say thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Life is a journey of individual steps.
They are yours alone.
They put you on a path that is unique,
that molds and shapes you. A path that gives you your voice,
Your artistry, your individuality, your beliefs,
your ability to do things no one else can do. What if we saw those differences as opportunities?
What if all of us embrace the potential in each of us?
When we harness the power of our difference, we inspire and elevate people's lives.
We create new perspectives that lead to new ideas and new solutions.
we forge new journeys that are shared. far we can go when we take that first step together.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd, for that warm greeting. Dr. Floyd Rose is the co-chair of the Education Committee. He handles K through 12, and we are on the Higher Education Committee. And we want to thank him so very much for all of the support that he gives us on the higher education side. So greetings. Today, I bring you greetings from the Higher Education Committee. For the last year, we've been working on white papers on social justice and virtual learning. So today at the Leadership Summit, we're going to be discussing each of those topics. And to help me discuss those topics, are going to be some very capable individuals. Dr. Roland Smith, who is recently retired as the associate professor and adjunct professor at Rice University. Dr. Johnny Brown, an adjunct professor over at Lamar College. We also have Dr. Charlie Hardy, who's a professor over at Alabama State. John Kirkendall, who is associate professor and at the School of Education in Illinois, the University of Illinois. Dr. Roveres, Dr. Derek Roveres, who is the Vice Provost for Diversity and Equity at Louisiana State University. Dr. Robert Yancey, who is Professor Emeritus at Kennesaw State University. Dr. Joseph Jones, a professor and also president of the Grounding Group, LLC. And we are delighted to have each of you in our discussion today in our panel. We're going to open up the panel today with a summary, an overview, I should say, of both topics, the social justice topic and the virtual learning. That's going to be done, the social justice by Dr. Johnny Brown, and then Dr. Joseph Jones will come on to talk about the virtual learning platform. Then we're going to ask each panelist a series of questions. And if you have questions in the audience, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and we will respond to your questions in real time. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists who are going to be responding to the questions of the day, but I also want to thank Dr. Johnny Brown, who's going to give us the overview of the paper on social justice. Dr. Brown?
Thank you very much, Dr. Silver, and I'm delighted to participate in this conference today to discuss the white paper that we put together in the form of increasing diversity and social justice in higher education. The paper is about what we believe is a continuing march toward ensuring civil, human rights, equity, and inclusion and belonging, with special focus on faculty, staff, and students in higher education. In the paper, we reviewed the research very widely and organized findings according to very critical areas on these areas of concentration, including what the terms mean, diversity and social justice, why diversity and social justice matter, programs and practices for student success, and areas of concern. So what is diversity? We wrote that diversity is participation by a group of people of differing backgrounds and experiences. And of course, that can be broken down in terms of learning styles, race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexual orientation, sexual identity, country of origin, religious affiliations, and more. Inclusion, we said in the paper, has to do with policies and practices that are in place to ensure active and intentional opportunities for and engagement by all students. So why does it matter in terms of student diversity? It matters because students learn from peers who have enjoyed different experiences and backgrounds. And when students are in a situation of similar backgrounds, people who they either grew up within the neighborhood and so forth, they tend not to be as aware or globally responsible, and they learn critical information and become more accepting by being with people who have grown up in different places. So diversity does matter. Also, just want to share a brief comment about social justice. We wrote in the paper that social justice has to do with pursuit of and expectation for equity, access, opportunities to participate, civil and human rights, and distribution of wealth and privileges in school and in general in society. So what are some proven strategies for success that we wrote about that HBCU and PWI institutions can learn from? For example, financial support. Money always matters. Put your money where your mouth is, so it goes. Offering childcare options, being intentional in sharing materials in a marketing campaign, holding community town hall meetings, making sure that information on the website is reflective of what the school stands for. Recruiting students in terms of diversity, making sure that the university widely considers a recruitment of students of different backgrounds. Making sure there are programs in place to help students transition from from high school to college, and then putting in place mentoring programs to help students succeed throughout their college experience. Putting in place a position called Chief Diversity Officer, where that person has access to resources and reports to the president or chancellor, and they have staff who report to the Chief Diversity Officer. So what are some areas of concern that we noted in the paper? One is paying attention to the politics that have to do with the court actions in terms of the push by some to turn the clock backwards. Also, practices in place that limit aggressive enrollment and academic success of people of color and women in certain schools and disciplines such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Each one of us, we summarize in the paper, has a responsibility to contribute for leading the way for changes for a better environment for all of us to live in. Thanks to the 100 Black men of America for producing this white paper on diversity and social justice in higher education and hosting this important conversation on the topic. Thank you very much.
Dr. Brown, thank you for giving us the overview of the issues related to social justice. We're looking forward to having a broad discussion on those matters. Right now, we're going to hear from Dr. Joseph Jones, who's going to give us an overview of the paper on the virtual learning. Dr. Joseph Jones.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Silver, and thank you, Dr. Brown, for setting the stage. Our white paper dealt with primarily virtual learning, or what was called in the past distance learning, and it was guided by at least 3 separate questions, right? But before I get into those questions, let me give everybody a sense of why we decided to explore virtual learning. COVID-19 pretty much forced higher education to rethink how it was going to offer its teaching and learning vis-a-vis through the web. And so we know that there were a lot of challenges, there were a lot of hiccups, and some institutions were doing better than others. Others had to pretty much make it up as they went along. But in looking at the pandemic and looking at the challenges of higher education, our committee just basically raised 3 basic fundamental questions, right? The first is, what is virtual learning, or how do we understand distance learning and virtual learning? And the second question was, what are the barriers and the challenges that exist to offering platforms like this? And then the last question was, what are some of the challenges that faculty face in teaching online? And so the gist of the paper was guided by those 3 fundamental questions. And just real quick, and we understand and we talk about virtual learning, we went back and we looked at, its origin. It was first called distance learning or distance education. And that was probably some 20, 30, 40 years ago. with the idea of connecting students all across the world in a classroom setting to exchange ideas, information, and so on and so forth. And then it began to evolve a little bit more when you had entire institutions that became actual virtual institutions that offered, for all intents and purposes, distance learning or online education. Unfortunately, a lot of those institutions were proprietary, which means they were seeking students, and it was for profit. So there wasn't a lot of teaching and learning that was going on during that time period. But accrediting bodies quickly began to set up standards and expectations. And so what we understand now as online learning and virtual learning has gone through the fire. And there are clear expectations around what should happen in classrooms when you're teaching online. But also, when we're thinking about virtual learning, there are at least 3 different ways that this can happen. You can have the online learning, then there's a hybrid option where you teach a little bit online and you meet in person, and then there's a conference option. And so we began to start to really understand that there are multiple ways in which virtual learning can actually unfold. But also, we understand that there are some advantages specifically for some particular communities. For those people who have health challenges, who deal with severe social anxiety or just busy work schedules, we understand that virtual learning or online learning is a very good fit for them. But in order for a student to be successful in virtual learning, there's a high level of discipline and maturity that is expected, because in some ways, not always, it's a kind of a self-directed process. But this also leads into the second question that we were talking about, which is, what are some of the barriers that exist when we're looking at virtual learning? And 2 things jumped out. The first was the digital literacy. How competent are people who are actually involved with this online learning? Like, do they have a digital literacy? Do they understand computers? Can they use computers? And then, of course, it's just access, broadband access. Do people have access to the hardware and the software, or just the internet itself, in order to have those to be online? And what we found is that specifically in Black and Brown communities, access to not only just hardware but software is a huge challenge, and it's a policy issue that we hope will be addressed coming out of the pandemic, because it's such an important issue. And then finally, the last issue we raised up, or the last question we talked about, were some of the challenges that faculty in particularly were struggling with in regards to teaching. And one of the things that we understood is that when teachers and teach online, there has to be a different set of pedagogy, a different set of engagement with the students in order to make sure that learning occurs. Also, there are various platforms that can be used to hold class, whether it's Zoom, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams. But even in holding class or hosting class online, you realize that you have to come up with another set of expectations, and some call it Zoom etiquette or an online etiquette. So you got to set expectations in regards to when students are going to show up, in regards to attendance, making sure that their camera is on, they're in a place where they're not being distracted. So all these things have to be considered when you're having online education. And of course, finally, just as the learner who is trying to understand and have a sense of digital literacy, so does the faculty member. They need to understand the learning management system and all the issues that it may come about, whether it's connecting a class with a digital ebook, whether it's building assignments, grade books. All of these things are very nuanced in regards to offering a class online. And so, in conclusion, when we think about virtual education and moving forward, there are some advantages and there are some pitfalls. But one of the things I think that we're really interested in 100 is making sure that our community can succeed through whatever platform or whatever medium, whether it's online, hybrid, or conferencing, so that our students and faculty and administrators can be successful in this venture. So that was the overview of our paper. So we look forward to having some dialogue.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I want to remind our audience that if you have questions, you can put those in the chat. We have someone monitoring those questions and we'll give you responses in real time. Now we're going to go to the panelists and we're going to be asking questions of them, getting their insight from their learned background. So the first thing I want to talk about is the whole issue of social justice in higher education. If someone could address this issue from the civil rights movements in the 1950s and 60s, what they saw in the 70s, and what they're seeing today. So what is that whole relationship between social justice and higher education over the last several decades? Who wants to take that question?
I'll take that, Dr. Silver.
Okay, Dr. Hardy. And then Dr. Smith.
Right. I think that it's apparent that during the civil rights era, you referenced lack of access was a major impediment to advancement of African Americans. And it also had to do with infrastructure that is going on today relative to, if you look at our interstate highway system, they invariably end up disenfranchising a certain segment of the population. And all of that ends up being lack of access, lack of equality, the lack of value. We're talking about value-added situations. All those are impediments to advancement.
Dr. Smith?
Yeah, so the whole notion of social justice and higher education came about with, we were focusing on, to expand on the conversation, focusing on access, right? Well, there were issues of trying to, it was part of social justice, but they didn't talk about it as being part of what we call today now as diversity, but that it's a benefit to everyone. It was the idea that you were going to help bring these folks along, but there was not a lot of thought to that. But then immediately there was a lot of pushback. And so when you had there was a lot of weaponizing of terms. So affirmative action started off in terms of education as a positive, but it was weaponized by anti-affirmative action folks as something negative. And so we were kind of looking at that. So then there were issues of using the words of minority as a euphemism. Then it was kind of looking at diversity. We kind of moved along the continuum. And so the whole idea of looking at this as beneficial to everyone involved was really not thought about very early on. And so now we're at that point that we're talking about diversity as an inclusion as something that's beneficial for everyone. That's something that's being missed, I think, in this whole discussion.
Okay, anyone else want to comment on that before we move on? Are you seeing a difference between the activists of social justice on HBCUs versus predominantly white campuses historically and contemporarily?
More recently, go ahead.
I was going to interject that having worked on both PWI and HBCU campuses, currently I don't see a huge difference. I think the complaints and concerns are being shared across those spheres, and we're seeing a whole lot more in common with the college-going students at HBCUs and PWIs. A very good example is the kind of complaints and concerns that were raised very recently and just settled recently at Howard University.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sit in where they occupy the administration building. I will tell you that's something that hasn't happened as often on our HBCU campuses, primarily because of the relationship that often exists between students, faculty, and staff and HBCU administration. Has been one of, look, we're all in this together. We've got to make the best of this situation. So let's look out for one another. Whereas on the PWIs, it's often been, an adversarial relationship between all students, staff, and administration. So I was very proud to see the Howard administration and the students, and I understand, there were some other leaders, Jesse Jackson and others, that helped work out a meaningful resolution to that situation. We saw similar kinds of complaints. Students were complaining about housing. They were complaining about tuition. These are at Howard. These are complaints that students echo at PWI very, very often. And to me, it's not a stark difference between the protests. Now, if we talk about social justice, I see the same things. The kind of protests that we saw, they were muted during the summer of 2020. They weren't as outspoken as we thought they were going to be relative to the police killings and other atrocities. But I will tell you that I don't see as much difference as what we had seen in the past.
Dr. Jones?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of echo a lot of those sentiments, but also kind of raise the issue of, when we look at how activism is playing out, particularly on white campuses, I mean, it's a different type of call, right? It's usually against systems of oppression. When we think about the history of social justice in higher education, and we even look back in the 60s and the 70s, and we think about some of the requests from Black folk who were entering white spaces. A lot of the critiques was around representation in the curriculum or in the classroom, and some of those same critiques are still going on today. And so when we think about, or at least when I think about social justice, we're talking about looking at systems of oppression, whether it's racism, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's homophobia, all these other kind of isms that somehow prevent, learning from happening, or at the very least, segmenting certain populations or relegating them to a minority or marginalized status. And so that is an important part of when we think about social justice, when we think about higher education. And we saw last year or the year before last with the protest with George Floyd, different calls and different critiques were coming out around having critical conversations around what are these diversity, initiatives really mean? Like, what do we mean by equity? And what does that look like in the classroom? And so I think that those salient points are also important when we think about social justice.
Yeah, I also think that as someone who was involved over 50 years ago as a student activist at HBCU, that we were focusing on the system that beyond the campus, that is the governors and the state legislatures who were doing that. So now what we're seeing now, we're coming back full circle. So at least for the public institutions, we're dealing with more increasingly diverse, increasingly conservative state governments that are wanting to take resources away.
I want to ask one more question before we move on to distance learning, and that is, why is diversity even important in higher education?
Outcomes. We have enough evidence, and some of it is contained in our paper. Enough evidence of outcomes for all students when we diversify, and I want to make sure our audience understands diversity is good for everyone. It's not just good for our Black and brown students, or LGBT students, or students with disabilities. It's good for all students. And we see this in very demonstrable ways, so that when students graduate and they've had diverse faculty in front of them, they have an appreciation for knowledge and scholarship coming from voices other than the ones that they've historically seen. They go into the workforce better equipped to work with a diverse set of supervisors as well as a diverse set of employees. When our students are in class with a group of folks who are very diverse and come from different backgrounds and different ways of thinking, different ways of worshiping, different ways of loving, and different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, that's the place where they're going to go to work. And so we see down the road that not only are they better employees, but they become better citizens because they have an appreciation for the difference. And so while there are certain immediate returns for increasing diversity in the collegiate experience, there are long-term returns as well.
We're in the middle of a pandemic now, and we had to shift the learning platform to online learning. And there's been a lot of discussion about the impact of that online learning, both in terms of whether or not students are up to date, whether or not people have had access. Let's kind of go into that discussion. What have you seen as the biggest concerns as it relates to the online learning? I'm thinking about Dr. Yancey, who talked about the fact that years ago, the state of Georgia moved to online learning, and now it's progressed to a whole different kind of level. So let's kind of talk about that a minute in terms of the challenges that online learning and virtual learning, as Dr. Cookendale has said, there's a diversity in the learning styles. So let's kind of address that issue right now. What are the challenges in terms of virtual learning?
Well, let me say, and thanks for the question, Dr. Silver. Let me say that there are numerous challenges, well, not numerous, but there are a few very highly salient challenges that students and faculty and institutions have to deal with when it comes to virtual learning. As far as students are concerned, it begins with access again. Students have to have access to not just computers and not just the internet, but high-speed internet. And they need to be able to download applications like this one to their computers, which means they need relatively new computers. On the university side, you get the question of faculty familiarity or comfort with the technology. Some faculty, incidentally, the younger ones tend to be more comfortable with it. The more senior ones tend to be a little less comfortable. And I can speaking as a senior faculty, that there's also an adjustment to teaching virtual, looking into a camera and essentially seeing yourself, and walking in a classroom full of people, looking at their eyes and their body language to see who gets it and who doesn't get it. And that's a challenge that I'm sure faculty are having in that regard. There are others, access to the internet. There's an emotional component. Is a student emotionally prepared to do relatively unstructured learning? Does he have the discipline to read without being prompted on a daily basis by faculty? Does he have the self-discipline to do the work, to prepare his reports and get them in on time without having those kinds of things? So the emotional maturity component is also one consideration. There are others, but I'll stop there. So I'm sure some other folks have some ideas also.
Well, you raised a very good question about the familiarity of the faculty with the various technologies. So I would love to hear one of the panelists or several of the panelists talk about the challenges that the faculty have had that showed during this pandemic.
Yeah, Dr. Silver, I could speak to that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I've had some conversations with educators who relayed these sentiments that there was a great deal of frustration, one, in the fact that there was a conversion that needed to take place. So when there were curriculums made for the classroom and then everyone was forced online, it was kind of a mandate to do that out of necessity. But there was very little training and support for some educators to be able to do that. What made it even worse was that in some cases, teachers were forced to do a hybrid type of a thing where they were working to educate students online who opted to stay at home, and then there were students still in the classroom who were attending class, and so that increased the workload, increased the frustration, 2 and 3-fold, according to some of these educators. This whole notion of the homework gap, Dr. Yancey brought up in terms of students' inability to focus in and do well in the online setting, was also an extreme issue. It's been talked about in several of the publications that we reviewed in creating this white paper, was that the homework gap, which really kind of goes back to the old school digital divide, where some folks did not have the access. And so when other students did have the access, they became more familiar with computational learning, and therefore were able to keep up a little bit better when the onset of the pandemic came. The last thing I'll say while I'm here is that although these are some extreme challenges, there does appear to be some promise, because you may know that yesterday or just recently, Congress passed a new infrastructure bill, which has devoted $65 billion to improving the broadband infrastructure throughout America. And so we'll be looking at that in the future to see if that indeed has an impact on how we're able to move forward and advance. And and kind of correct some of these wrongs and get over some of these obstacles of virtual learning.
I think
Silver.
it should also be stated that the fragility of the infrastructure. I'm coming to you all from Louisiana, where Hurricane Ida has still rendered a number of us without electricity, but in my own home in New Orleans, still without internet access. And so if I were teaching from home, I would not be able to do that. I would have to scurry like so many students. And we saw pictures of students at Starbucks and McDonald's trying to get homework and classes in. And so it's not just, I'm hoping that infrastructure bill will aid in addressing the deserts of access that we know exist. And you can only guess where those are typically found. But I also hope that they're doing more than just that. We've got to figure out new ways of providing internet access as well if we're going to continue down this road. And I can tell you, there's no doubt that higher education is going to continue down the online learning road.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think in addition to what's been stated, this is a perfect opportunity to engage them to become advocates of making sure that there's a continuation. You know, many times they don't have a perspective as to how things happen. And I believe that right now, when we talk about preparing the next generation of leaders, which is also a part of our challenge in social justice, you don't want to retrogress. So you have to keep moving forward. And see, there are always plans afoot to move the clock back as you are trying to go forward. And I think right now, if you look at some of the redistricting that's taking place across the various states, we have to be careful that somebody's always watching, so you're not getting disenfranchised and not making forward movements. So, but we have to energize and engage the students with perspective on these things just don't happen, that somebody is constantly working that you don't even see. And so we have to have that pipeline developed from the college level on into the workplace.
We saw the transition of learning from face-to-face to online and virtual learning and what have you. And people began to use this terminology, the new normal, the new normal. Do you think this so-called new normal is a temporary phenomenon, or do you think it's going to expand beyond the pandemic in terms of the use of technology in the virtual learning space in higher education?
I don't think that there's any doubt that this won't continue beyond the pandemic. As I had indicated earlier in an earlier conversation, the University System of Georgia tried to do this 20 years ago. And they got pushback because faculty members and students, neither faculty nor students, were accommodating. We refused. We didn't say we weren't going to do it. We just didn't do it. But this COVID has forced everybody into it, and a lot of people have become very comfortable with it. People don't want to leave home to go to work. They don't want to leave home to go to school. They don't want to leave home for anything. They want to stay at home. And the universities can admit those students, provide education to those students, charge them tuition, count them in enrollment, and not have to provide classrooms or student housing for them, which means the overhead for students who are doing distance learning is much lower than the overhead for students who are residing on campus. So I see it as a profit center, not just for the proprietary schools, but I see it as a profit center for the traditional institutions, that they can expand their enrollments without having to spend a whole lot more money on facilities, student facilities, dormitories, and classrooms.
If I could just jump in, Mr. Chairman, the whole idea of new normal is something that always changes, right? We normal, what's normal today was not normal 20 years ago or 40 years ago. So we're always facing a new normal. It's been gradual. This has been abrupt. That's why people are giving it a name. the new normal. And I think we'll have to expect that with the new technology coming down the line, that things will continue to evolve. And there's some things that are in the offing that we might even know about today that will help to provide more, access to education. But we just don't know what that is right now. We have some ideas, but the idea of normal being a static thing, and that we have this new normal that we're going to go back, there's no way I could see us doing that.
Well, the industry is driving it normal, making it a new normal.
That's right.
And you see, they carry a big stake in terms of what's going to happen in this country, and they have adopted it very well. They're moving with it, and if our graduates are going to be competitors and be able to contribute, they're going to have to create that type of mindset to move in that direction. They got to take more responsibility for themselves. You see, I think that we have to encourage that. We encourage them, but then, you stepped into another level. It's not high school part 2. You got to take command. You got to move. And so this is the mindset that we have to nurture them, but at the same time, push them.
I heard earlier one of the panelists talk about the digital divide and the fact that in some communities, and I assume you're talking about Black and brown communities, the impact of not having access and the impact that it has on the virtual learning platform. So let me throw a little curveball and see who's going to catch it. And that is, who wants to talk about the merging of the two topics, social justice as it relates to the issues that we also see in the virtual learning platform?
Well, I would certainly take a quick stab at that.
Right.
Because I think it's apparent when you look back at kind of the history of how the digital divide evolved. It's been an access issue, right? That, as you alluded to, has affected certain communities, right? The education of African American students and those particularly poor students. The greatest divide academically has been determined to be socioeconomic in this country. And for students who do not have the same sort of access, that has provided some problems over time, because here we are attempting to forge through in this new normal, and yet we have the potential to leave even more students behind, kind of based off of this new construct. I think that any attempts to deal with social justice has to have the connotation about education, and I think this needs to be a major consideration given the way that we're moving in both the public K-12 sector as well as the higher ed. I think we still have to kind of factor in race and this homework digital divide factor as we move forward, and keep a keen eye on how we're educating students of color and poor students in that regard.
And if I may, one of the things I think that all of the audience and all of us should not assume with this new investment in infrastructure, providing access, is not the end of the struggle. There's a new kind of term that's been floating around called technological redlining that basically exists in regards to how people are getting information. And we see a lot of this, how Google is coming to the Capitol, how information is actually getting to our students. And so, social justice is embedded. It's an issue of not only just delivering access to students in regards to being on the internet, but once they're on the internet, how do they utilize these search protocols, these search engines in a way that that they can see themselves and the search engines don't give back information that is something that's distorted or dehumanizing in regards to them trying to learn. And so that's a whole nother struggle, probably a whole nother panel we can have a whole conversation about. But if we're talking about mixing both of those things, I think that's the next natural fight we're going to have to take up.
Thank you.
I remember when I was studying economics at Morehouse, Professor E.B. Williams, who was the department chairman, used to like to say, $1 million yachts being built and Hottentots need shoes. And of course, it was back in the 1960s when $1 million was a lot of money. And his point was, I think, relevant today, that we have billionaires. We have one guy who's I've heard a couple of days ago is approaching the trillionaire status. And half the people in this country, not African American or people of color, half the people in this country earn $25,000 a year or less. So we've got a divide that is an economic divide caused by disparities in wealth distributions. And incidentally, those guys who have all those billions and trillions of dollars don't pay taxes to support education, to support infrastructure, to support other kinds of things that we're talking about, and they complain that they spend millions of dollars in income taxes, and that sounds like a lot of money to me. But when you just made 50 billion and you need to spend 5 billion, at least it's 10%. If I can count that far, maybe 10 billion, because that's what we normally pay of our income. So, $1 million to you, to a billionaire, is not the same thing as $1 million is to the average person. So that argument about we spend so much money and we can't keep spending all our money, so the poor folks who don't want to work, can be supported, that's just a party line that's not legitimate. Everyone knows it's not legitimate. People at Walmart having them go on the food stamps. We as taxpayers are supporting the corporations that are billion and $1 trillion corporations, and they won't pay taxes to buy the food stamps that we're having to give to their employees. So that conversation about we don't want to have to pay all the taxes doesn't have any validity.
Well, Dr. Yancey, you bring a valid point. Actually, I was going to go down that road, but you already had taken us down that road, and that is, since you did such a good job in terms of mending and blending social justice and virtual learning, I wanted someone to try, and you've already taken us down there, to now add that third component in terms of social justice, virtual learning, and economic empowerment.
And that's something that I've been screaming about for months now, as we often refer to this pandemic as if it were a single event. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Yancey, you should have seen Dr. Silver squirming when you were talking about trillionaires.
Getting close to home.
Yeah, it was too close. He's in my neighborhood now. When I look at where we are as a society, it is so much larger than a single pandemic. And so as we come out of this, and looking at the merger of the online learning experience, where we have the social justice concern about access, and then we layer on top of that the economic, we cannot forget the political nature that we're living in right now. Is the most volatile political nature existence that we've had as a country in years and years and years. And so you've got climate issues, you've got access issues, you've got issues of all sorts that compound on top of each other. And so I don't think it's possible to segment out and say, well, if we just fix the infrastructure, if we just fix the economic, we've got to fix it all. And since we're in this conversation, the one that drives so much of it for me is the question of racial inequity. And that's deeper than just social justice. It's the racial inequity part that moves our people further back. We don't have time to take on all of this. But I see a conversation in this country that looks to move us further back from where we've advanced, especially when it comes to questions on race. This very, well, depending on where you are in time, but at this very moment, we're at a juncture that I don't know, if we don't pay attention to, that we'll ever be able to continue the progress. I think we start to move backwards. The 1619 project recently came out, and it's talking about some of the same mistakes that we're making today that have been made for century after century after century.
Well, I think that where we're going is adjunct to that is the fact that, as I indicated previously, we must continue to encourage advocates among our students. They have to feel themselves having responsibility to advance the ball. If not, we will end up going in the wrong direction. Many times they don't have a perspective on how they got to where they are. And so we must do a better job in trying to activate, encourage, and create some new activists.
Well, we know that we haven't had enough time to deal with all of these topics. Either one of those topics, social justice could be in 2 hours, or virtual learning could be 2 hours. So what I want you to do in a very crisp way, I'm giving each one of you 1 minute to make any statement on either one of the topics or both. So I'm going to call your name out and ask you to move forward. So I'm going to start with the first person that I see on my screen, Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much, Dr. Silver. I want to get into the conversation, the issue of housing. A lot of what we've been talking about in terms of social justice, geographical, the geographical part of it is important as well. When you live in a certain neighborhood, things are not always equitable. And so let's make sure in the conversation we include housing.
Yes,
in
sir.
terms of access to resources and equity. But I also, in closing, would just say, this discussion is so important for all of us. Together, the environment is more positive and the quality of life improves when all of us contribute in a positive way. So I encourage all those who are participating in this leadership conference, to spread support widely for social justice and civil rights causes. Share information on social media. Any audience which you may be part of, amplify this kind of conversation to encourage all of us to work hard to make sure we don't allow the clock to turn backwards. And in fact, we work hard to turn the clock forward in terms of social justice and equity for all. Therefore, the quality of life improves and is better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Yancey.
I'd like to remind us that Dr. Hardy was talking about how we should try to create advocates in the classroom. In many of our classrooms, particularly those that are state supported in the South, that can get you fired these days. You can't not go into a classroom and say anything to suggest that anybody anywhere is being discriminated against or not being treated fairly. And I know, particularly in Florida and in Texas, and I suspect it's going to happen in Alabama and in Georgia and Mississippi and some other places, that they're going to make the decisions at their regents saying, you can't teach critical race theory, and they're taking critical race theory and made it into a euphemism for everything they don't like, which is what they've been doing wrong for the last 350 years. So it's going to be a little more to take a little more of a strategy to create the advocates that you are speaking of, because you can't do it. You may not be able to do it openly in the class on the campus, college campus anymore.
Okay, Professor Hardy.
I think the old people told us, where there's a will, there's a way. I think that one of the things that we do, obviously, we're not going to go out and do something that's going to be blatant, but we have always had a way to communicate. We have, just like the 100, we have fraternities, we have sororities, we have churches. We need to have a better synergy in being able to hand off to some other entities that won't be under the same level of scrutiny that we are, but the job has to get done. And so what I'm saying is that I talk about advocacy every day. And you can't teach ethics to me without a level of advocacy. And so what I'm saying is that we have to be just like our forefathers, be creative enough to still get the message through. I grew up in Montgomery in the 50s, and I guarantee you the message, we found a way to move it and advance the ball. And subsequently, we had some success. So we don't need to give up on this. Let's find a way to make it happen.
Thank you. Dr. Rivera.
Simple answers to our societal ills is removing the silence. Good people standing by, watching things happen, and not stepping up and intervening for others. And so I challenge all of our participants in this event to remove silence, to step up, to say something, to advocate, and to be a voice of change. In the immortal words of the late John Lewis, good trouble is not always bad.
Okay, Dr. Smith.
I'd like to kind of invoke a kind of a medical metaphor here, because I think that the issues we've talked about here are at their core antidotes to groupthink, which leads to injustice and discrimination and policies and inactions. So if we think about this, that this is why we need to be doing this. I've just recently been reviewing a book on the life of Frederick Douglass. And it's both been, it was actually both kind of inspiring, but also realizing that we are starting to shift back, but that there is a way for us to reverse feel. And I think that the discussions that we've had today and in this topic, in this paper, this is just one way of us kind of keeping keeping us moving forward.
We move to Dr. Jones then.
So yes, I would just say in closing to the audience, to this leadership group, that both the issues of social justice and virtual learning, in order to change or to have an impact in either one of these issues, we have to agitate. We have to change public policy. You'll probably hear this all throughout the conference, but voting matters, and it really, really matters. But not only just voting, but being a educated citizen and understanding the issues, taking the time to realize that we have to get into the weeds. We have to get down in the dirt to really, really understand not only these issues, but to change some of these things that existed in the systems through which we live. And so that would be my charge to anybody who's listening is just to get involved somehow, whether it's having discourse or voting or, advocating or lobbying for public policy to change these conditions in our communities. And so that would be my last word.
Thank you. John, did you have anything you want to add? Okay, we're having a little problems there. So let me just say thank you to
Doc, I'd also like to chime in with the last thought as well. Yeah. So, I mean, because the colleagues, my colleagues have brought these great notions together and talking about groupthink and informing education policy. And I would hope that this white paper, when internalized by those who read it, would generate the sorts of discussions that are needed to get to that level, right? Which is an all-inclusive conversation that involves everyone involved: students, parents, councilmen, elected officials, teachers, admins, but ultimately the policymakers. And that this discussion, this conversation is delivered at the floor of the policymakers with a keen insight on what we need to have to make better outcomes for our community. So I hope that this generates the sort of discussion and the follow-up action that really moves towards some sort of policy implementations.
Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen. We have really embarked upon two great topics. I direct our listening audience to the 100 Black Men website, the white paper on social justice and the white paper on virtual learning. Both of those papers are on the website. So we want you to go to the website and look at the paper in depth and share it, and hopefully have some conversation at this leadership summit. We want to thank the 100 staff for all the support that they give the Higher Education Committee throughout the year, not just in terms of this platform, but throughout the year. We want to thank those who have brought the technical assistance today to get us on this platform. And in closing, we want to thank Chairman Tommy Deutsch, for giving us this platform and the latitude to address topics that impact the very population that we serve. So as you continue your summit, this leadership summit, we want you to continue this dialogue. And if you have any other questions beyond the summit, feel free to contact one of us on the panel. So again, thank you and have a blessed conference.
At Geico, our strategy includes community engagement. Part of our vision is improving our communities and supporting local organizations through volunteer and outreach efforts. We want to help build stronger communities for tomorrow by investing our time and energy today in financial literacy, food insecurity, the environment, and other community-based initiatives. We call it our insurance plan for the future, and it's a policy we're proud of. We're honored to be a partner and look forward to a positive future together.
Hi, I'm Michael W. Victorian, and I am a board member of the 100 Black Men of America. But more importantly, I have the pleasure of serving as the Collegiate 100 chair for the 100 Black Men of America. And I want to thank each and every one of you for attending our 2021 leadership session. And more importantly, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day and sharing with us when our Collegiate 100 session workshop titled the Collegiate 100 Experience Free Game Session. You know, we all have to agree, and I want you to know that the 100 Black Men of America feels that the Collegiate 100 has an important role to play, not only in our organization, but and on and off their respective campuses. Obviously with guidance from their sponsoring chapter, their chapter advisors, as well as their campus advisors, while following the guidelines and procedures of the 100 Black Men of America. The overall goal of our session today is that we would like to strategize on not only providing you effective and efficient strategies to successfully onboard, but to successfully retain members of the Collegiate 100, while creating an innovative as well as an intentional programming to truly understand and maximize the work that we need to do within our community. So, as we move forward, let me have, this is a great opportunity for me to introduce to you this distinguished panel of individuals who have agreed to share with us on this session. And I'd like to begin with, as important as all four of them are, with two of the individuals who I think are extremely important. And I'd like to start off with the introduction of Miss Tia Kennedy, Vice President of the Collegiate 100 of Georgia State University. Thank you for joining us this evening. And secondly, I'd like to introduce another one of our outstanding collegiate students, Joshua Johnson. Joshua is the president of the Collegiate 100 of Prairie View A&M University. PV is in the house. And thirdly, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce an individual who wears two hats in terms of the Collegiate 100, and Dr. Zacchaeus D. Johnson. Not only is he one of the chapter advisors for the Collegiate 100 of Southern University A&M College, but he's also their campus advisor. So Dr. Johnson, thank you for taking your time to join us today. And of course, last but not least, the Collegiate 100 cannot function in the chapter without critical leadership. And I would like to take this opportunity to introduce one of the outstanding leaders in the 100 Black Men of America in our chapter network, Mr. Harold Oglesby, who is the president of the 100 Black Men of Savannah and has a lot of foresight and dedication and support of the Collegiate 100 chapters that 100 Black Men chapter supports. So without any further ado, let's jump right into these questions. So the very first question that we're going to have is, and I'd like to start off with Miss Kennedy. So, you know, one of the critical issues of the 100 Black Men of America right now is the amount of participation that we get from our Collegiate 100 students, especially when it comes to scholarships that are designed just for them, as well as internships. So how do we, in your opinion, how do we enhance that participation rate?
Of course. So this is something that Collegiate 100 chapters in Atlanta have definitely been struggling with, the Georgia State University chapter included. I would say from my perspective, I was inducted in the spring, but I didn't really get the chance to really see the opportunities for scholarships, internships, and networking until about a couple months ago. So I really think that the first issue that needs to be addressed is kind of outreach, making sure that the presence from whether it be emerging or 100 Black men is there to assist the Collegiate 100, and so that we all have kind of this holistic approach to our students. There are so many amazing opportunities within this organization and throughout this organization that are going untapped simply because people don't know about it. So for our chapter specifically, the approach that we're really trying to do is just direct networking through our independent networks. So I'll go to the people in other organizations that I'm a part of. I'll go to people whom I might not be close with, but think would be a great fit for Collegiate 100 and let them know about the opportunities. And then, of course, letting our general body know, apply to these internships, apply to these scholarships. And just by doing that word of mouth, I think we've really kind of gotten the ball rolling. And I hope to continue to be able to relay these opportunities to our students.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move that same question on to President Oglesby. If you could, and if I need to repeat the question, don't hesitate to ask.
Heard the question loud and clear. And I think that one of the focal points for a successful collegiate chapter is to have good communication. For the chapter that is supporting that chapter of Collegiate 100, to make sure that the Collegiate 100 know and are informed of opportunities, and also to grow those opportunities with others. You know, right now, I'm not in my office because I'm down at the golf tournament down on Sea Island with some professionals here. I have collegiate members with me here who are meeting with CEOs and the commissioner of the PGA, just creating opportunities, but making sure that the relationship between the chapter that is supporting the collegiate and the collegiate have a bilateral relationship, have open communication, and that information is shared, and that it is shared in a timely fashion so that the students can take advantage of opportunities and continue to grow.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If we could move on to Dr. Johnson.
Heard the question loud and clear as well, and we also have some issues, minor issues with students participating, or Collegiate 100 members participating in scholarship opportunities. But one thing that the 100 Black Men of America can do to provide additional assistance is more of a social media marketing presence for scholarships and internships. And I know when they send out the general info communication, maybe create a different format. So maybe sending 1 or 2 scholarships at a time. And because I know students oftentimes become overwhelmed with wordy communication. So they basically want to see what the information is in a subject line, a few bullet points, and then maybe some type of graphic or logo or moving video object. Communication follow-ups are important as well. So say, for instance, a student actually submit, or really not submit, but send a draft copy of, or start on the application for the internship or externship, but they never go back to complete it. So maybe a communication or follow-up to say, hey, Joshua, you started off the Geico scholarship, but you have not finished it. You're almost there. And that gives the student another opportunity to go ahead and finish it, and also know that the 100 Black men actually care about you getting this opportunity and or the money. So I think more communication strategies, more marketing strategies, in a different format when it comes to the general information portion of the email communications.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And so, and last person on this question, Joshua.
So when it comes to participation, when it comes to these scholarships and internships, I agree with the rest of the panelists. Communication is a big thing, especially for smaller chapters. For example, we have the smallest chapter in the Houston metropolitan area with 11 members. And so trying to reach more people and trying to get these members to fill out these scholarships and internships. I mean, as president, we could send them emails. We can discuss it in the general body meetings. But I feel there's some kind of authenticity when it comes from the 100 Black men themselves. Even if it's just a representative coming in to the general body meetings, or our advisor discussing it with our members or potential members.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And by the way, I was writing some of those notes down too. Let's move to our second question, right? And I'd like to start off with President Oglesby on this one. What do you see, not only as president, but just as a long-term member of the 100 Black Men of America? What are the benefits of securing a successful Collegiate 100 chapter? And as president, what do you think you can do to provide and further support to expand and retain those Collegiate 100 members?
And that's an awesome question, and that's one that we've actively been working on.
Right.
So what we gain from having the collegiate chapters is we gain more feet on the ground. Our collegiate chapters are always supportive of activities that we ask them to be supportive of. They are continuously volunteering. So instead of having 20 members show up, we may have 20 members show up and 30 collegiate show up to support an activity. So it's a definite benefit of making sure that we have the capacity to do what needs to be done to support the youth in our area. So our goal is to show the Collegiate 100 their worth by supporting them, by helping them with their marketing, by doing simple things like making sure that table coverings when they go out to present themselves, make sure they have a customized tent, make sure that they have a nice seal and that they can compete with other organizations, and they go out and they look professional. They look professional, they look uniformed, they look like something that you want to join. So not only do they look like an organization that someone on campus may want to join, their actions and the projects that they take part in also demonstrate these guys are, and ladies are rocking hard. They're doing the hard work, and they look good. So we try to make it more appealing to others, so that instead of having 11 members or 10 members, they have 60 members, they have 50 members. They can be more selective when it comes to an opportunity to bring on new members. So again, our goal is to support them. And if they need something, some help with marketing, we have marketing guys. We want to make sure that they have a good message going out. And we also make sure that they do things the right way. And we just encourage them. And then again, communication to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I can personally attest to what you guys are doing down there in Savannah, that for the program that we participated in with you a couple of weeks ago. So
I want to say just one more thing and then I'll shut up.
Sure. No,
and
feel free. All right.
And it'll add on to what the doctor said earlier. And that is the fact that you have to be able to communicate. And when I say communicate, you have to be able to communicate with people the way they are. Sending out a bunch of emails, sending out things on Facebook is not going to get to the Collegiate 100. So you have to be inventive. You have to go to TikTok. You have to go to Instagram. You have to go to GroupMe. You have to go where they will get the message and understand the message. And the message doesn't have to be long. It could be quick, straight to the point, but just to have that open communication in a method and a medium that is usable by both parties.
Thank you so much, President Oglesby. Joshua, we'll move on to you next.
So, as president, like I said earlier, we only have 11 members in our chapter. We're the smallest chapter in Houston, and we're probably the smallest chapter in Texas. So these past 2 years, it's been hard to kind of, I'm not saying retain members, but kind of recruit members as well because of COVID. So because of COVID, you have a lot of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who haven't really experienced Collegiate 100 and haven't experienced what they could benefit from being in Collegiate 100 and what they could benefit from the 100 Black men. So now it's just on us to, communicate with students on campus, communicate with the 100 Black men, and also make sure we're marketing everything right, we're having the right tools, really just putting ourselves out there. So I feel like that's the key to a successful Collegiate 100 chapter post-COVID.
Thank you so much. Dr. Johnson.
Absolutely. So meeting students where they are is major here in securing a successful C100 chapter. Is imperative to college campuses as it pertains to mentoring, which is one of our pillars, right? Bring awareness to specialized topics such as mental health, diversity and inclusion, and also entrepreneurship. And we also must just understand that students who are inducted into these respective chapters are our future, and we must adapt to, not conform to, but adapt to their lifestyle as well as their learning style. So we get so many different types of students with different personalities. Diversity and inclusion is very, very important as well. So just meeting them where they are and taking them to the next level where they need to be competitive.
Ms. Kennedy? Or did I start off with you? No.
No. But yeah, so to answer the question, I think it really boils down to community. I know personally, I didn't know how much I didn't know until Collegiate 100. So within the African American community, it's so important that we're able to bring each other up and uplift each other and move forward as a people. And I think 100 at all its levels does that. So with the Collegiate 100 growing, we're giving college students the opportunity to really grow into themselves, to reach their full potential. And at Georgia State University, we are one of the most diverse schools in the nation. And so many students aren't involved in opportunities to grow professionally. So one of the largest benefits of having a successful Collegiate 100 chapter is really just the outreach to our students, the availability for students to grow and for students to become the person that they know that they can be.
Thank you so much. And the panelists, if you'll allow me some input on this in terms of that question, just from a personal perspective, the benefits that I see of securing a Collegiate 100 chapter, and I think President Oglesby hit it right on the head, is that from a 100 Black Men chapter, you have now expanded your footprint in your community with active young people who have the desire to go out and work with the tasks that we're facing in our community. And above everything else, you know, mentoring is the cornerstone of everything we do, right? So we're mentoring younger people. And let's just be realistic about it. Our younger mentees are going to relate to our college students a lot easier than they're going to relate to us, okay? And if our motto is what they'll see is what they'll be, that's who we want them to see. We want them to see this talented tenth, these outstanding young college students who are diverse majors. And to be honest with you, the other benefit is where I see our Collegiate 100 students want access to us as members, right? They want to know, what does it take to be a hospital administrator? They want to see that, right? So we can talk about it, but Brother Oglesby can talk about it and share with them exactly what that is, right? They want to know, well, I want to go get my PhD. Well, Dr. Johnson has his PhD, okay? Or what does it take to be a police officer or an attorney or a doctor? So, and we can provide them so many different opportunities on it. But I want all of our chapters to understand is one of the most critical things in securing a Collegiate 100 chapter is the continuous support of that chapter. They are not an independent organization. They are part of your local chapter. I would invite them to your meetings, invite them to your invite their executive team to your executive team meetings. Create your own Collegiate 100 summits, as the 100 Black Men of Savannah did the other day with their Collegiate 100 chapters. Now, Mr. Joshua Johnson, you just mentioned in your last statement the COVID on your campus. So, what has been the impact of COVID directly in terms of the Collegiate 100 at Prairie View University?
So COVID-19 has had a huge impact on my chapter, only because when I came in as a freshman a few years ago, probably around 3 or 4 years ago, Collegiate 100 was very active. They had about 15 to 20 members. They was active on campus and off campus. And so when COVID came around, at the end of my junior year, only the individuals who knew about Collegiate 100 would apply for Collegiate 100. So I believe it was like 10 applications and 5 or 6 people were selected. Due to that, speed up to the next school year, we have to figure out a way how to reach more students. And it's hard to reach the freshmen and sophomores if they don't really see you putting in work, especially if they haven't experienced the 100 Black men in high school, middle school, or in their community, depending on where they come from. So it was hard to reach those students and also have in-person programs at my university. And so now we have 11 members and we only have 2 members that's not graduated. So it's kind of up to us to make sure we communicate with the students on our campus and reach out to these younger people, around the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who will be the future of Collegiate 100. And just really show them the benefits of Collegiate 100.
Can you give us some feedback on that question or any input on that? In the term, what has the impact of COVID-19 had on the Collegiate 100 chapter at Georgia State?
Okay. Yes. So Georgia State University has had a lot of the same issues as PVAM has. So COVID-19 really changed everything globally, but specifically at the collegiate level, students haven't really had the opportunity to be engaged on campus for almost 2 years now. And in addition to that, a lot of the students who are on campus now didn't experience a lot of their high school experiences and are on college and don't really know where to start. So across campus, in all organizations, recruitment is becoming a huge struggle. But I find that at Georgia State specifically, we're starting to get back kind of to a sense of normalcy. And although the pandemic isn't over, people are trying to find ways to adapt. And as Collegiate 100 chapters, I think it's important that we are now moving forward and really going towards recruitment. So it's up to us as a chapter to really talk to people, to get on the ground, really letting people know what exactly Collegiate 100 is, what 100 Black Men of America is, what the benefits are. And again, we also have a small chapter, just like Mr. Johnson has. We have about 9 active members, and that is kind of a small number. So next semester and moving forward, we really want to make sure that we are providing these opportunities to students, because I truly believe that there's no limit to success for us as a people. So we really need to move forward with that and kind of, adjust from that kickback that COVID has given us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kennedy. Dr. Johnson.
Absolutely. So I will honestly state, respective to or in reference to the Collegiate 100 at Southern University, we did not miss a beat at all. We've hosted many of our events that were supposed to be in person via Zoom and or Teams, because that's the platform that Southern University used for within our learning management system. But students had events like Being Black on the Block. We were able to partner with our parent organization, 100 Black Men of Metro Baton Rouge, especially as it pertains to Project Excel. So we carried out all of our events, and I told students that this is an opportunity for us to pivot. And in life, you definitely have to be able to pivot in order to still be successful. So we did a lot of pivoting. We were still successful at hosting those events, and we were still able to keep in contact. We were still able to communicate, and we were able to still be connected with our 100 Black Man chapter.
Thank you so much. And President Oglesby.
We had the same thing as the gentleman just spoke about. We moved to a virtual platform. We held our Real Talk Saturday sessions, and the students kept up with that. We probably had a higher number of students involved, both collegiate and mentees, virtually than we had when we were having in-person activities, which will hopefully result in us having increasing people available when we go back to having more and more live events. Hopefully COVID will continue its downward trend and stay down without any more surges, and we will do fine. It was a challenge for the chapters on campus with recruiting has been noted earlier. Georgia Southern Statesboro campus has had some challenges recruiting, as well as our one of our other chapters, and so it's a challenge that is being met, and I think that we'll overcome and hopefully continue to grow our chapters.
And we're going to move on with the next question, and I'll start with Dr. Johnson on that question. And our two collegiates mentioned that they're looking to increase their numbers in their chapters. And Dr. Johnson, if you could maybe share some experiences as an advisor on how would you address expanding your respective chapter with viable active members?
Absolutely. So I've had an opportunity to be the advisor here at Southern University in A&M College for about 6 years now. I gained the chapter with about 3 members, and I noted, or I call it, recovery to resilience. They had no advisor, and I was able to build that connection once again with my 100 parent organization. And now the university considered this organization to be the feeder organization for all other organizations, including Greek Life. And that's because we do 50% on campus and 50% off campus. So I've been able to, as an advisor, I've been able to expand confidence in the students, creativity, motivation, meaningful programs, building their creativity skills. And I always tell them things that we do here within this organization individually and or collectively, it's an opportunity for those skills to be transferred into the workforce. So that's very, very important, as well as setting goals and expectations through programming and your informational activities. So one thing when students are or collegiate members are vying for positions to become president or vice president or even secretary and treasurer, students have to, or collegiate members actually have to create PowerPoint presentations and have a platform. So whatever your platform is, as an expectation of me, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to ask you to complete 90 to 95% of that if you have the potential to hold that position once you are elected by your fellow collegiate members. So every year or throughout the year when they are programming, I always say, hey, as president, you stated that you do X, Y, and Z. So Tinto even stated that who rises to low expectations. So I have a really big expectation of my students, of my student leaders, of my collegiate members as well. So whatever they say they want to do, I make sure that they have the resources and tools as an advisor for this chapter to be able to successfully host those events and activities.
Thank you so much. And we're going to move on for feedback from Mr. Tia Kennedy on the exact same question. So what would be some of your experiences, or how do you look to expand your respective chapter at Georgia State?
Of course. And I definitely agree with everything that Dr. Johnson was saying. I think having a good relationship between the students and the advisors, the chapter advisors and the campus advisors, really makes everything work a lot more smoothly and allows for us to lead by example. I'm a huge proponent of that. And when people start seeing the initiative that we as a chapter take and see the work that we're doing on campus, off campus, or wherever it may be, people are automatically inclined to say, hey, what's Collegiate 100? How can I join? How can I be a part of that? And we've already started to see that as we've kind of bounced back from some of what COVID has done to our chapter. And specifically in Atlanta, we've had kind of a rocky start with some of our chapters because the Collegiate 100 of Atlanta broke up into the individual school chapters about last year. So we've been trying to figure out what's the best way to individually reach out to students in that way. And again, COVID kind of put a hindrance on that, but we're bouncing back. And I think that now that we have an amazing relationship with our advisors and we have the opportunity to speak with students all the time, we're really making those strides and making that progress. And I think it's just really about keeping that up and putting these opportunities in the hands of our Collegiate 100 members, as well as the students who look to join Collegiate 100.
Thank you so much. President Oglesby.
So I think it's absolutely key to have strong leadership from the advisors, strong leadership from the chapter advisor that's working with each of the collegiate chapters. You know, we have the good fortune of having multiple collegiate chapters, and you have to have a communication. And we also invite our collegiate leaders to take part in our meetings. They come and present the activities that they're putting on. So there's, again, bilateral communication.
And this brings up our next question that I'd like to address to our president of our PV chapter, Mr. Johnson. The one of the I refer to as myths around the Collegiate 100 is that it is a all-male organization, right? When actually our policy states that our Collegiate 100 members are drawn from primarily African-American male and female college students. So with that in mind, how do we create organizationally from 100 Black Men of America chapters, both the 100 Black Men chapters, the Collegiate 100 chapters, a safe place to ensure that there is equality within our chapters?
To make sure there's equality within the chapters, it's really just, you know, continuing, staying on the right path with our pillars, and just, you know, being that example for both male and females, younger children and, you know, people older than us. So it's really just, you know, continue mentoring, leadership development, economic empowerment, and everything of that nature. Just continuing staying on that path. And with the myths with Collegiate 100 being a 100% male chapter, those are just myths. We have a lot of females in our chapters, and next year is probably going to be 60% female with the new prospective members that we're looking at right now. And in order to recruit, you know, new female members, we have to collab with other organizations, most likely female organizations, kind of let them know that, you know, we're open for diversity and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to move on to Dr. Johnson.
So I would say this can kind of be a touchy question, especially maybe one or two or three of the chapters who have 100% male here at Southern University. So it's important to educate our students on equality, diversity, and inclusion, because women can bring a unique perspective to organizations, individually or collectively. So it's just big to educate our students on having male and female in the organization, and also bylaws, because some students do not fully understand, they're not fully aware, they do not fully utilize their bylaws, and this is something important. So first, you know, educating the student on diversity and inclusion, Title IX, and other important laws that talks about equality, but also educating them on the bylaws that are standard and that are handed to our Collegiate 100 members as they are inducted.
Thank you so much. President Oglesby, if you could address that question, please.
Sure, and this was one of the questions that came up during our summit. And we had a deep discussion on this, and what he said earlier about the bylaws and making sure that the students were aware. And, you know, one of the challenges that one of the chapters raised was the fact that they were having lower than expected membership. And I told them, you guys are, you know, hurting yourself when you don't open it up to being co-ed. It's absolutely the best thing to do. And like the doctor said, you gain from having a diverse membership, and it's for the better. And we encourage them to do just that. So I believe that we'll see even more young ladies and men and others join the organization and make it stronger.
Thank you so much, President Oglesby. And Ms. Kennedy, your feedback, please.
Of course. So yes, we don't have that chapter or that issue over here at the Georgia State University chapter. We're actually a majority women chapter. And, you know, I'm proud to say that, but, you know, I do believe that it's important to have diverse perspectives in any organization or in anything that you're involved in. So I think it's important to obtain and maintain these images and these whatever we're projecting, and ensuring that it's a place that's open to everyone. So of course we have a focus on the Black community and on African Americans, but we need to make sure that we are being diverse with our thought, with our perspectives, with how we address issues. And I think just keeping the culture open is really going to be the best way to invite women to those chapters who may not have as large of a population. Just letting a friend know, let's say, for example, every male try and recruit at least one woman to bring them over, and just kind of have that nice even ratio and make sure that there is that diversity in thought.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. So as we move to the next question, as chair of the Collegiate 100 of America, I see several common denominators in successful chapters. One, however, is an effective chapter and or campus advisor. Okay, so Harold, President Oglesby. So what were some of the characteristics do you think as an effective and efficient chapter advisor, whether it be on the chapter level or the campus level, or both?
So I think it's someone who is really good at communicating and listening. Listening to the needs of the students, listening to the needs of the chapters, and finding a way to make that work between both of the organizations. We've had the good fortune of having consistency and strong leadership. All of our chapter advisors have been in that role for more than 4 years, and they listen. They listen and they bring concerns, and we find resolutions to any issues that come up. Whether it's from a chapter standpoint or whether it's from a collegiate standpoint or even small things. We try to resolve any issues just to build stronger bonds and relationships between the chapters and the collegiates and our communities. And when the chapters need support, we do that. And one of the things that we found was that we were doing a really good job of mentoring mentees. And when I say mentees, I'm talking about kids that are in elementary through high school. One of the things that the collegiate chapters shared with us was that they needed some mentorship. They needed to learn some of the things that we were teaching. We're teaching financial literacy to everybody but the collegiate. So we revised that, and we've had programs where we mentor the collegians and have special programs that are dedicated specifically to the collegiates. And specifically things about making that next step into the professional career. How do you do it? What is your resume really supposed to look like? What does your CV look like? What does your LinkedIn look like? Because a lot of folks will look at your LinkedIn before they look at your CV. And just having those conversations and ensuring that we're supporting the collegiates the way they want to be supported, and that, again, that relationship is bilateral.
Right. Thank you so much. Joshua, I happen to know your advisor. I know your chapter and your campus advisor. So not that I'll report back. No, I'm just kidding. but if you could share from a collegiate perspective, what do you think are some of the characteristics of an effective and a efficient Collegiate 100 advisor?
So first things first, I think what makes a good Collegiate 100 advisor is somebody who's there to mentor the organization and its leadership, advises the organization, but they don't run the organization. They allow the organization to still be student ran. I haven't experienced somebody, an advisor who ran the organization, but I know some organizations on my campus, the advisor makes all the decisions, schedules all of the meetings and stuff of that nature. So I feel like it's essential that, the advisor, could be a mentor to the leadership and also to the members. Somebody who has an open door policy, of course, schedule appointments and stuff of that nature. But, when they have an open door policy that allows students to come in, ask for advice, really get to know the advisor. Because I know here at Prairie View, and just being in Houston, you have the Collegiate 100, the Emerging 100, and the 100 Black Men. So there might be somebody interested in joining the Emerging 100. You could ask for advice from your advisor. In this case, Dr. Jefferson. And or, what are the steps to become a part of the 100 Black Men? What are the steps, to get these jobs, internships, attend these conferences and things like that. So it's really essential that you have an advisor that could be a mentor and an advisor at the same time.
All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Kennedy, if you could share with us on that topic.
Of course, of course. So I'm very fortunate to have amazing advisors all around, always willing to help and always there when you need them. And I think those are some of the traits that are super important. In addition to that, I think it's important for the advisor to be passionate about the collegiate students, about what they're doing, about being a bridge between the students, and whether it be emerging in 100 Black Men or just professional development in general. So I think having that passion and that care is really what's going to be fundamental for these advisors. And like Joshua said, somebody who allows the collegiate students to do what they need to do, somebody who serves more as a liaison rather than somebody who's trying to run the organization. And again, I've been fortunate to have such amazing advisors who really do that and who provide these opportunities and who genuinely want to see you grow and be better. And I think if every advisor just kind of goes in with that mindset, all of these chapters have the opportunity to be successful beyond imagination. And of course, with such an amazing organization like 100 Black Men, I have no doubt in my mind that advisors nationwide are able to do this.
Thank you so much. Dr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. So from experience, advising is not a cakewalk. It is not a cakewalk at all. You must be a warm demander. That's a characteristic. You must be transparent. You have to have grit. You have to be firm and fair. You have to give students the liberty to lead, as I've heard President Kennedy and President Johnson as well. Sometimes I can't get the young men out of the office. We're currently preparing for an induction on Friday. And when I tell you they take over the office with all of their shirts and lapel pins and what do you think we should wear? So being passionate about it, don't be a bulldozer advisor. It's important to oversee and not manage the organization because it is a student-led organization. So I pride myself, as Joshua and also Ms. Kennedy stated, on allowing students to have ownership of the Collegiate 100 of Southern University and A&M College and just prepare different opportunities and put them in spaces that they can be successful, that they can be, that they can have networking opportunities, that they can feel safe in the space with voicing their opinions, their ideas, different programs that they would like to host, whether this be virtual or traditional, and ensure that all of their ideas are ethical. And just remember to always facilitate. We're just here to oversee and manage the organization, but you guys actually take it to the next level. We want to make sure that it's ethical and everything that you do is in line with bylaws and that we're following our 4 pillars and policies and procedures. That's the only thing that we're here for. We want you guys to shine. And one thing I pride myself on, again, is if an event is happening, you will see Dr. Johnson sitting in the back. They have the run of shows, they have the PowerPoints, they have the QR codes, everything. And that deals with not mentoring, but just coaching them to prepare a successful event. And again, the kids are known as a standard here on the campus, and I'm super proud of them. I'm super proud of them.
Thank you so much. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing today and enlightenment, not only that you share with me, but all of our viewers and our entire network. So as we prepare to close this session, I want to give each panelist an opportunity, 1 minute, all right, for some closing remarks. And I'd like to start with President Oglesby, please.
Sure, it's gonna be hard for me to do it in 1 minute. But I would say that again, my key component is always going to be communication. Having the right people in place with the right mindset to support and come out with the best outcome for the organization as a whole, and encouraging students and giving them the tools to be successful, and defining what that success looks like between both individuals, between the Collegiate 100 as well as a supporting chapter, and put that information out front and make sure that everybody's doing the best they can to ensure that the young people that we support are absolutely at the highest level of performance that they can be. Thank you.
President Oglesby, thank you so much for that. And thank you for your leadership and your dedication to the Collegiate 100 program.
No problem.
Joshua, could you give us your closing remarks, please?
First and foremost, I would just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be, discussing these matters with you all. Secondly, to the 100 Black men out there, continue to inspire people in Collegiate 100, continue to mentor us, and continue to be there, no matter if it's a mentor, father figure. Some of us don't have fathers like that. So I appreciate the opportunity. Everything I am today is because of 100 Black men started in middle school. So this is really big for me, and I just want to give you all my thanks.
And Joshua, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day today to share with us. I want to thank you for your leadership. You and I have opportunity to talk. We share the same district because I'm in Louisiana. So we got a kinship there. I want to thank you for your leadership and what you're personally doing to uplift the Collegiate 100 at Prairie View University. Next, I'd like to move on to Miss Kennedy.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I'm glad I was able to give my perspective. And moving forward, I look forward to seeing how all of our chapters grow and how we as Collegiate 100 can grow into ourselves as a chapter as well. Again, the work that 100 Black men as well as Emerging 100 is doing is so admirable. And for us to be able to recreate that on a collegiate level is truly an amazing opportunity. Thank you all so much for the professional development, for the help, and for just being there. So thank you.
And thank you so much for your leadership. We had opportunity to talk in the last couple of days and before. And I want to, since you didn't, I'm going to give a shout out to your advisor, Mr. Fred Parham. Okay. Right. So lastly, before I get to my closing remarks, Dr. Johnson.
Absolutely. So I'll just say that it's very important to continue to brand our students, ensure that they are successful both academically and socially, provide as many opportunities, 100 Black men of America, that you possibly can, because as I stated multiple times, they are our future. Remember that they are not an interruption of our work, but they are the purpose of our work. And whenever you have to restart or refocus, do just that, but do not quit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your daily activities with our Collegiate 100 and our chapter, Dr. Johnson. And you set the example for what we want all of our Collegiate 100 advisors to follow. Again, I'd like to thank all of the individuals who have had the opportunity to participate in this. I'd like to thank all of you who have attended the leadership conference and took the time out to attend the Collegiate 100 workshop. The Collegiate 100 as an organization, as I opened up, plays a vital role in our entire 100 Black Men of America's network, both on and off their campuses. They are truly our future. They are the next step to who we are. To join our emerging 100s, to join our 100 Black men chapters, to carry on our mission. They will be our legacy. So for all of you who have Collegiate 100 chapters, take the time out to visit with them, to hear what they have to say. As President Oglesby mentioned, it's critical that we support these organizations. And in a lot of cases, we have Collegiate 100s who came into our chapters beyond the administration that they're currently in. But it's critical that we support them. Not only do they provide us additional muscle to get our mission done, they need our mentoring also. And as I just said, they are prepared to take the next step to continue our mentoring over a lifetime with our other mentees. It has been a pleasure in doing this. I want to, I'd be remiss if I did not thank the sponsors who of this entire leadership conference, who made this possible. We thank you for what you are doing, what you will continue to do, what you have done to allow us to carry on our mission. And with that, again, thank you for signing on and sharing with us. If we can do anything to help you individually or collectively in supporting your Collegiate 100 chapters, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you again. May God bless you. And I look forward to sharing and supporting each and every one of you. Have a great day.
everyone, and thank you to Mentoring While Communicating in the Future. Got a great panel that's with us today, and we're going to get started and make sure it happens. So I want to first of all thank the 100 Black Men of America for being a part of this great event and this great panel that we're going to have and discussion. I want to let you all know on the panel today, we have none other than Anthony Sampson. He's our Bylaws Committee Chair for 100 Black Men of America Incorporated from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Dr. Johnny E. Brown, Adjunct Professor, Field Supervisor, Lamar University, and member of the 100 Black Men of Greater Beaumont Incorporated. And Daniel Williams, Mentoring Chairman, 100 Black Men of Greater Beaumont Incorporated. The overview looks like this. We're going to talk about the collaboration of mentoring. Why mentoring? Why do we use civic organization, educational organization, faith-based, or political organization, to that point, business organization? Research by Grossman and Gary, they talk about 5 to 15 million youth who actually need mentors in this country. As we discussed the why in mentoring, we will answer the question, where do we start, and discuss the specific population, geographical area of most in need of mentoring. Then we would talk about those strategies, and everyone listening in will better understand when we talk about mentoring. 100 Black Men is noted as a mentoring organization. So when you hear us today, you hear these guys answer several questions. So I'm happy to have this panelist on board right now. So I'm ready to roll, and I'm ready to go with the first question. I'm going to call on Dr. Brown to answer this question. And this is the question, Dr. Brown. If you were asked this question, why mentoring, how would you respond?
Hello, Dr. Murphy and other panelists. I would say mentoring is very important for growth and development, for skill building. It's something I think is important from birth, even throughout maturity and adulthood. It's important for us to have role models to follow, to grow and learn from, and we all benefit when we have models that are clear to us about what to do, what not to do, someone that we can trust, someone that we can communicate with honestly, help to, again, grow and develop in a positive manner.
Thank you, sir. Anthony Sampson, you've been on board with me for quite some time doing mentoring. Not only for mentoring the 100 way, but now mentoring the 100 way across a lifetime. Mentoring is what we do as an organization. How might we strengthen the reach of our mentoring programs?
Well, thank you, Dr. Murphy, for that question. I want to say that basically how we strengthen our mentoring across our network is very important. First of all, I want to say it really begins with our chapters, communicating to their various communities how important it is for our mentoring program to go forward, identifying young men, young women who may need our help in various aspects of their community, whether it deal with school, whether it deal with after school activity, etc. But it's so important for us to communicate thoroughly. And I do believe it boils down to communication. Let the people in your community know who you are, what you are, and how you're going to help the community through our mentoring program. It is so important for us to realize that our kids are depending on us to show them the way. Despite all the things that are going on in this world today, that's why it's so important for us to communicate thoroughly with them and to their parents as to why it's important to have our mentoring program. And that's how we grow in strength. That's how we communicate. That's how we get better as a community and as a nation. We must continue to strengthen our mentoring program, and it starts with what we do as an organization, 100 Black Men of America.
Thank you very much to you and Dr. Brown, both. You answered those questions, I would say, with some seriousness about why we mentor, why we should mentor, where we're going. Research shows there are approximately 7,000 young people, and I know Dr. Brown, being a former school superintendent, 7,000 young people drop out of school every day in the United States, which is about 1.2 million a year. What is this nation's most vulnerable population and why? We hear it all of the time, but what do we think it really is, and why do we look at it? Dr. Brown, go on with that, and then Anthony, you can certainly chime in.
I personally believe our youth during the teenage years would be the most vulnerable. As students leave, for example, elementary school, they get into middle school, it's the first time for many of them to feel like they're on their own. They don't have one teacher all day, or two teachers perhaps in some cases all day long. They go from class to class, see different teachers. They go to lunch a lot of times on their own, where they're not in a line, so to speak, as they are typically in line in elementary school. And they get to walk home by themselves in many cases. And of course, up through high school, the older they get, the more freedom they enjoy. And unfortunately, too often, the youth have not gained the skills or the strength, the foundation upon which they would make better, good decisions. They're often they're not connected with an adult who is serving as a positive role model for them. Some of them are not doing well in school, and so they unfortunately make poor decisions and get in trouble. Don't do well in school, and regrettably, we lose them out of school, and then too often in trouble. So I think the teenage years, moving that transition from elementary to middle school, and then also the transition from middle school to high school, those are two of our challenging periods in life of our youth. And the more we can do as adults to put in place structures like the 100 Black Men organization has been doing for many years and continues to grow, the better off all of us are going to be in this country.
Anthony, anything you want to add to that?
Just a little bit. Dr. Brown is really hitting it right on the head. A lot of times our kids, when they first enter junior high school, that's when they kind of have a different idea about life and freedoms that they can experience. So when we transition from that elementary school age, where they've been somewhat protected by the parents, by the teachers, and a pretty decent at following instructions. But, kids can't wait to get older. Kids can't wait to start doing what older kids are doing. So there's going to be that era in which basically you have to have some sort of mentoring programs in the schools, in the community as well, to help guide their path, because sometimes they're confused. So Dr. Brown is 100% right. Being a prior superintendent, have seen these firsthand as to how the transition of students and what happens. And more importantly, when they're in junior high school and then transition to high school, that's when the real realization of life start appearing, because they have more freedom. They're beginning to drive cars. They're going on dates and things on that line. And we want to make sure they don't miss what is right to do in life. What is the right thing to do? And in high school age, that's when you have to start focusing on that, because the next stage is college, when they're really out there on their own. And here's where you make where the rubber hit the road, as what people would say. You're either going to make it or not out there on your own if you're not doing the things that are right. So you really have to look at those years and that transition from elementary school to junior high school to make sure we catch them when they're young, and continue that mentoring across their high school years to make sure that they're doing all the things that they can do that is right, and learning as much as they can learn about life itself.
Great. When I talk in the training, we train, Anthony, we had the conversation, and people don't always believe it, that in the fourth grade, almost 4% of that population drops out of school. By the time you get to, like you say, elementary, 6th or 7th grade, then all of a sudden you might have 15 to 20%. Then by the time you get to the 10th grade, unbelievably, the compensatory law kicks in, and you have 50% of our students in this country dropping out of school. That adds to that 1.2 million. And that is indeed the vulnerable population. Thank you. You didn't name that to a particular race, a particular gender, or anything. You say our young people, and that's what the 100 Black Men is all about. It's about the children, and not just a particular race of children. This is what I want to ask all of you all, if you will. And this is a question I know Dr. Brown probably want to jump on, but I'm going to try Mr. Williams again. When should parents be involved in a mentoring program?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Go, Mr. Williams.
Concerning parents, certainly we would take any and every opportunity to get parents involved in mentoring. We feel like that's the most influential person in a child's life, and the parent can benefit as well from the mentoring. We talk about a lot of different things, and especially if a parent has some children coming behind the person or child that we're mentoring, it gives that parent an opportunity to learn and to be able to pass that information on to subsequent children. But certainly, again, our experiences are collective and cumulative, and we take every opportunity to invite parents to come along for the ride.
It helps build a successful mentoring program. Thank you for that, Dr. Williams. And I know that our former superintendent want to chime in. Before he chimes in, I'm going to ask him to tie the two together, because I know that's how his brain working. Myself, having been a superintendent, you want to think about the involvement of parents, but then you want people to look at how would we define a successful mentoring program?
Sure. I'll be glad to respond to that. I think, I'll take the part about the successful mentoring program first. I think a successful mentoring program is one where there's a network of individuals who are working together in cooperation for a common cause to support youth, whether that's through the church, working with the school, whether it's a service club or a fraternity, sorority organization, working with the parents and the school. Again, I think networking matters, where there are commitments that are made among adults in support of the youth, and where youth agree to make commitments that they're going to agree to cooperate and do certain things a certain way and be responsible. In terms of parents, I think parents are, I look at parents and mentoring kind of like coaches, where they work to develop a child's strengths, share a child's interests, spending time with the children, being a friend, but also strong in terms of adulthood, helping a child reach his or her full potential. So I do think there's a connection. Parents, I think, really should start at birth, mentoring children up through, frankly, adulthood, through maturity. And it's important when parents work in cooperation with the schools, with the schools, with the service organizations, with the churches. The children have a much better chance to develop appropriately.
Right. We cannot leave out faith-based information, but I'm coming to you, Mr. Williams, because I want to drop this, and I want you to chime in this piece I'm about to drop on Anthony Sampson from Dallas, Texas. And in that, I started off talking about 5 to 15 million children who could benefit from mentoring in this country. It didn't say race, creed, color, sex, religion, or national origin. But when you think about that, and you think of the dropout rate, think about what Dr. Brown just talked about. This is chapter 7, and I put it as question 7. Why are there people who refuse to mentor? So that's for both you and Mr. Williams. Anthony?
I'm baffled by that question in the sense that I don't know why people will refuse to mentor. I really think that basically when a parent or someone that you know is taking an opportunity to mentor with you, you may not know you're being mentored at that time. So I do know that it is important for parents, teachers, ministers, or whoever's in the community, political leaders, whoever, take the opportunity to mentor a youth. It is so important. I can't figure out why somebody would not want to. And a lot of times in our organizations, we have members who would join, but they don't want to mentor. We often tell them that basically we are a mentoring organization. There is something you have to offer. If you're a finance guy, you can teach dollars and cents, what it means to learn how to save money, how to spend money. If you are a person who enjoy the arts, there's an opportunity to take a child to observe a theater play. That's mentoring. You got to look at the fact that basically it's not just looking at your core curriculum that you have at school, but you can look at a curriculum that is outside of the school that involves mentoring, and that is all those things I just mentioned. They're so very important. The thing that each one of us have to do, if we say we don't mentor, you got to ask the question: do the kids ever dream? Do they dream about what they want to become? But the only way they can do that is through mentoring. And then when they dream, they establish goals, and their goals become their reality. So that's why it's so important for us to tell every adult, every person who wants to mentor, or every person who wants to be part of a mentoring program or a mentoring organization, you have something to offer. We need you to bring that to the table and sit down with our kids and teach them what you know. Show them what you know, take them where you've been, help them to understand how important it is to get this information now instead of later.
Hey, Anthony, I like that. I'm gonna add this. Brother Williams, come on, because I want you to jump on that as well. Anthony just said to us in a nutshell, don't sit on the couches in our homes and then complain when children not acting right. Go ahead, Brother Williams, all the way from Beaumont, Texas. Bring it to us now.
That was very Mr. Sampson. If I may, okay, yeah, that was very good, Mr. Sampson. If I just may add, some people feel like mentoring takes up too much time that they could be doing other things. To that, I would propose that however you're spending your time, if you're spending your time positively, that could very well be a lesson to use with a child. To be mentored. In other words, mentoring is just the idea of spending time and sharing time, if you will. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Sharing time with an individual, particularly a youth. So however you're spending your time, if you're doing that in doing something positive, sharing that time with a person is in fact mentoring that person, because you're teaching a lesson. And you're teaching a lesson at the same time you're doing whatever it is that you feel that you have to be doing at that time, but you're sharing. Another reason people might refuse to mentor is lack of confidence in themselves, or not realizing that the knowledge they have can be shared with somebody else. But it oftentimes comes down to confidence in ourselves, that what do I have to offer? What do I have to share? My life experiences are not that broad or that deep. But in fact, they are more broad and deeper than our youth. And so anything that you can share, anything that we can impart on them to make their past a little bit easier, a little bit lighter, we ought to take that opportunity to do it. And lastly, they don't realize that the process of mentoring is beneficial to both parties. Iron sharpens iron, if you will, so that as we teach, we learn. And so that's the idea also with mentoring. If I'm going to pass something on, I'm going to do my best to develop that thought, to develop that idea, so that I can pass that on to someone else. And that sharpens me. And so again, that's another thing mentoring does for not only the mentor, but mentee, but the mentor as well.
That's great. What they see is what they be.
Yeah, absolutely.
What they see is what they'll be. That's real men given real time. What is our greatest challenge as an organization? 100 Black Men. We're a mentoring organization, 103 chapters. We mentor across a lifetime, age 8 to 73 plus. What is our greatest challenge? Anthony, will you go with that? And I'll jump it over to Dr. Brown.
And Dr. Murphy, I talked with you on several occasions when we see each other or on the phone or whatever. I really sincerely think what our biggest challenge is really keeping it fresh. Yeah. You know, as we go in from one era to the next, from one century into the next, from 1 year to the next year. We need to find ways to connect to our mentees. It is so important for them to see what's going on in today's world. So keeping it fresh as to what's going on today is so important for our youth. That's why sometimes I listen to various types of music, from hip hop to country and western to whatever. I look at various shows that the kids are entertained with. I look at the social media stuff. I want to try to keep it fresh so I can learn about them and what they're thinking today. It helps. And it is beneficial to me to know that stuff so I can communicate properly with them and they can communicate properly back to me. So that's one of the biggest challenges we have. We need to try to do everything we possibly can to keep it fresh. And that's when I was over the mentoring program here in Dallas-Fort Worth, I remember telling one young man, one of our new leaders, to say, give me something different. I don't want to do what I've been doing in the past. I want you to give me something entirely different so I could communicate to our youth and you can communicate to our youth that will help solidify our current year curriculum for mentoring is concerned. So keeping it fresh is going to keep our kids engaged. And I think every chapter should find a way each year to have a new twist on the mentoring program. It could be the same 4 pillars that we cover, but it's got to be always a new twist, something fresh, something new.
Dr. Brown.
And I agree with everything that Anthony Sampson just said, keeping it fresh. I also believe this has to do with leadership. In each of the local organizations, there's a leader in place, and there's an executive group in each chapter. And I think when the leaders show commitment, and I'm not criticizing any leaders out there around the world. I'm just saying when the leadership is there, better things happen. When there's excitement, enthusiasm, and commitment, better things come from that kind of scene. Now, the other part is, I'm thinking, I used to be a coach. I was superintendent, but I also enjoyed being a coach. At one point, when I was in middle school, I was a coach of football, basketball, track, tennis, and swimming. And I enjoyed every minute of it. That was when I was a middle school coach, before coaches had to be, specialized in 1 or 2 sports. When I was in San Antonio in middle school. Then in Austin, I became the head basketball coach at Austin Anderson High School, where I basically was in charge of 1 sport. But although I did assist in other, like football, everybody in Texas has help in football. But anyway, I think it's important to have incentives. When you think of like in track, you have a heat header or somebody who you think the 2 or 3 are going who brought in the best time, so to speak, or the best results before the meet that you're running in. And there's a prize that comes, you put them there and then they run faster when they're next to each other. So there's a prize at the end. So I do think the 100, while we're doing great things, it'll be to our advantage to put in place some incentives so that by the end of whatever period is designated, there's some kind of recognition to those clubs which have done well according to the criteria that are established. Then finally, I just say accountability. You don't want to beat them better to get them to do better or to embarrass people. But I do think there ought to be clear criteria against which every club is measured. There's certain things you're expected and required to do to maintain a chapter and to be solvent, so to speak, and relevant in the organization.
Thank you very much, because this leads me into the next question for Brother Williams. We can't do it all as an organization, and you led to that. We are asking by the 1st of January 2022, National Mentoring Month. This is something Chairman Deutsch talked about with me, how we ask other organizations or ask us to identify other organizations within a 10-mile radius for us to award them for their work. We're not out there doing it. Brother Williams, you are the mentoring chair for Beaumont, Texas. What is your role in terms of trying to develop collaborative mentoring, or what's your views about collaborative mentoring as a part of the 100 Black Men of America Incorporated?
Well, thank you for that question. The idea there is to use every lever that we can to help our kids. When you think about year after year, you won't see the same children, over and over again. So our time with them is precious. So the idea is to use every piece of leverage that we can, and where we can bring in other organizations, different points of view, different experiences. We should do that. Also, one of the things that have resulted from the pandemic and the unrest of the last couple of years, there's a lot of different organizations, a lot of different financial institutions that have pledged money to our communities, communities of color. They pledged money. They've gone on their books, both formally and informally, pledging financing, pledging support, and certainly this is the season to bring those kinds of resources to bear to help our communities thrive, to help take some quantum leaps, if you will, toward the efforts that we've been making. This is the season to do that.
All right, thank you very much. What I'm going to do now as we move forward, I'm going to go with the next questions, and I'm going to ask you to answer them individually. And if you feel the spirit or spirit led to answer, jump in, then you do so. I'm going to start with Dr. Brown. Name one attribute that makes a mentoring program successful. I'm quite sure you probably already said it. I know Anthony said several. I like the point of keeping it fresh. And then, Brother Williams, you did talk about we got caught in this pandemic, but nevertheless, name me one attribute that makes a mentoring program successful.
I would say positive and consistent communication.
Positive and consistent communication. Anthony, same question.
I would say always be there. Keep your commitment. A lot of times with mentoring programs, you start strong, but you finish so weak. So I would say keep your commitment. If you're there on every third Thursday of the month, then you need to be there every third Thursday of the month. And that's a commitment to the students, to let the mentees, to let them know that you're serious about what you're doing. And when you're serious, they get serious. And they can see it in your eyes, and you can see it in their eyes that they're committed to the work that needs to be done. So stand committed. Make sure you're there when you're supposed to be there.
Positive, stand committed. Let's go. Mr. Williams, what's your word?
When I think in terms of one attribute, I think in terms of relationship. The faithfulness and consistency is important, but along with that, relationship with the youth, the individuals, making sure that they understand that you're here for the duration, that you can be trusted with their feelings and with their thoughts, so that they understand that what you're looking to do is to have a relationship with them and to develop a friendship, a kinship, and so that they're better for it.
One attribute.
Can you hear me at this point?
Yes.
There we go. That's the word that comes to my mind. In other words, develop the faithfulness, consistency, but develop a relationship.
Okay, you mentioned faithfulness.
And they know they can depend on it.
Consistency, being dependable,
yes, sir.
Being positive, committed, determined, those words. And those are the words that we talk about, are the attributes we talk about as becoming a successful mentor or having in a successful mentoring program. Let me do this, and I want all three to answer, and not necessarily the same age. Which age group is the most difficult to mentor, starting from age 8 years and above? Which age group? And as a past superintendent, you better not say middle school.
Wow.
You were trying to get hey Tony, he was trying to get the age in his head. Man, those middle school students.
You're a past superintendent as well. You should answer that question, Dr. Murphy.
No, I'm gonna let you answer.
Oh, I think I would say probably ninth grade. If I were, the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, I mean, it's a challenge between elementary and middle school, as I said earlier. But while we lose so many kids from summer after 8th grade toward the fall of the 9th grade year, we got a lot of work to do in all these grade levels, but in particular middle school, like you said, but also I would say most difficult is as they're getting in the 9th grade frame of their school term. That would be the most difficult, in my opinion.
That transition, because what people don't realize sometimes when they reach the 8th grade, they are a senior, basically. And then all of a sudden they start over again really, truly as a freshman. And there is a gap between that and trying to close that gap. Anthony?
Yeah, I'd agree with Dr. Brown. That 9th grade period is just like, I'm a baby amongst all these wolves, if you will, meaning the upperclassmen. They're probably picked on a little bit more than they want to be picked on. So they're just trying to find themselves. And I think if we get them when they're that age, I think it's a good thing. One of my mentees mentioned that to someone who was having a conversation about our mentoring program and when he started, and he's grown since then. So I do remember one time taking a 9th grade on a trip with us, and he was a 9th grader, but he was more or less a 8th grader because of his age. So he had moved up in classification because of his ability to do his work at school. But when you looked in his face, you said something different about this kid and the fact that he was so young. But even with those who are at the right age are being challenged when they make that transition from junior high to high school. So that is a good year when we find our most challenging times as well. And I would say as well as the 10th grade, because basically a lot of things they've adapted to the world of high school at that point, and now their attitudes are not slightly, but somewhat different as they go forward.
Brother Williams, which age group is the most difficult?
I can't help but agree with Dr. Brown and Mr. Sampson as far as the age or year most difficulty. That 12 to 14 years of age, they have younger children are perhaps more malleable. They listen a little bit better, a little bit more eager. When you get to rebel, maybe you're not even sure what to rebel against, but you're rebelling. And then as the kids get older, 16, 17, 18 years, realizing that they are in pre-adulthood, and all of a sudden, hopefully, a lot of them start realizing that, hey, I do need some guidance. And so there's an openness again. We're talking about most difficult, and I agree that that's true. But we also talked about the resources that we have, and the need is urgent, and certainly if we want to be more impactful or most impactful, being able to move into the elementary school age would probably be the thing to do. So there's a sense of urgency, with the preteens and teenagers, but certainly if we want to really make a difference and an impact, those younger years, again, might be some fruit to be born there.
Let me add this too. One thing that's important about that particular age that you can tell your older mentees is that they can mentor those younger people, because you got to have that reach back type of program as well. That was one superintendent that we had out here in the Arlington area, and he wanted us to take our high school mentees over to visit the junior high school kids just so they can get a feel for what it's like to be in high school and talk to them and so on. So that is so true that is a more vulnerable time for them. And I think reaching back to the 8th graders as they become 9th graders, even the superintendents, and Dr. Brown would agree with this, to say that we need to do more of that because of the challenges that the 9th graders have when they reach high school.
That's great. But you were sure that Dr. Brown, because he's been a superintendent, would agree with what you were saying?
Yeah,
just because y'all
I see notice his head, so I'm
you're both from
on the right
Texas.
path.
Okay, I got you.
And I did agree.
You did agree. Okay, send him a check, Anthony. But
I will do that.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask this question. If we define mentoring as a discipline of thought, what do you think the Danish theologian and philosopher Søren Kierkegaard meant by this statement? To be that self which one truly is indeed the opposite of despair. To be that self which one truly is indeed the opposite of despair. Dr. Brown, what is he saying?
Well, it's kind of like the phrase we've heard in sports, but just in general. When what is it, Maya Angelou? When a person shows you who they are the first time, believe them. And I'm not quoting her correctly, but I think it's important for all of us to be who we are, not to pretend that we're someone who we're not, and to present ourselves in terms of integrity, honesty, truthfulness, and that's the best way in terms of showing an example for others to follow and the best direction to take in mentoring. Be who we are. Don't try to be someone whom we're not. Just be honorable, and part of being honorable is being honest about who you are, and always try work at doing the right thing.
When you call my phone, when you hear that, the words of Maya Angelou, and it's clear, you're right there. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, because they know themselves better than you do. Anthony, your thoughts on this theologian?
Ironically, I have a presentation that connects to that, and it deals with your swagger. It's how you talk, how you speak, how you dress, dictates who you really are. Often, I also have another quote, and I can't call it out right at this particular moment, but it does speaks to what comes out of your mouth it kind of dictate who you are. And so we want our kids to look at that. I think that statement is saying that if we look at ourselves correctly as to who we really are, who we really want to be, it's the opposite of despair. So how you walk, how you talk, how you dress is saying what direction you want to go in. And if we get our kids to understand that if they have an aspiration in life, you need to walk it, you need to talk it, you need to dress like it. Because if you don't, then it's going to be the opposite of who you're trying to be, who you're truly trying to be. So that is really important for me. So let's have that swagger about yourself. Speak it, walk it, dress it, and whatever comes out your mouth kind of depicts exactly who you are.
We're supposed to be the example.
Yes.
What they see is what they'll be. Real men given real time. Brother Williams, your time, and then I'm going to go into the 1 minute where we get a chance to close out. See there, Brother Williams? Okay, let me go ahead and move on then. We were caught in a pandemic. What should have been the answer for our mentors to remain involved with our mentees? You pretty much answered it, but we were prepared, Dr. Brown. We were prepared, Anthony. We went into a virtual climate.
Yes.
We said, stay one, be different, keep moving forward. And our chairman of the board said, hey, let's do it. How do we still reach our mentees? How do we continue to reach our mentors? But you were right, Anthony. Call each other. Be on the phone. What are your thoughts? What else could we have done?
Well, we definitely did everything that we could possibly do. I remember during the pandemic where we had several virtual conversations, and we started brainstorming trying to determine how our kids were going to be successful during this time. And we realized, number one, that there was could be some depression issues because of the lack of interaction with each other. So what we did, we moved from the virtual aspect of meeting with our kids to an outdoor aspect where we could still continue to mentor. So I know a lot of us did that, but to me, that was something we needed to have more of us do, because on the video on the virtual teaching and things on that line were driving our kids a little bit wacky. So getting out was one of the things I thought was very helpful mentally, was helpful physically. It gave a breath of fresh air to the kids to let them know that we're still in support of you here. We didn't stop what we were doing. So the chairman was right. When we went to virtual, and then we had to evolve a little bit to go say, what else can we do that's safe? We can do meet outside somewhere 6 foot apart, masked up. So we wouldn't stop reaching out to the kids. And that was very helpful during that particular time. So I don't know if we could have done anything more, or more of us could have done more of that. So I think that's the thing that was kind of correct in reference to that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Brown.
I'll just add to what he just said. We got to continue to look forward for doing things in different ways. Don't try to solve complex problems using simple solutions, in a sense. And so those organizations where, they didn't give up, they continue to look for different and new ways to communicate, as Anthony said. Those organizations, I think, have been most successful and can be most successful. Now, for example, I'm one of the readers for the Beaumont Independent School District Elementary School, where each week, last year and this year, I'm taking time every week, and my wife does as well, to read to a child, and so that's a sense of mentoring virtually, and also supporting a child learning to read better. So that's just an example of something that I'm doing, my wife is doing, and that others could do across the country. But again, I agree with the other things that Anthony said. He said it well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know if we lost Brother Williams, but I want to do this as we move forward. Will you each, in 1 minute, give me your final thoughts? And as you give your final thoughts, I'll do it this way and say thank each of you for being here, and thank everyone in the organization. But before I do the final thoughts with this, I think it's been a great discussion and a great panel. I think people can learn, who listen from this, and move forward. I like what you talked about with the virtual climate. We stepped into a virtual climate. It's something that people around the country, as a matter of fact, I want people to know that the National Mentor Organization reached out to me and said, what are you doing as 100 Black men? Over 25 years ago, they reached out to me and to Tracy Knight at the time, who was in programs, and saying, hey, how do you develop this? What's going on? And now they have a whole national front. So we've led the way with many organizations, even before someone was mentioning the word collaboration or corroboration. The 100 Black Men of America Incorporated, Brother Brown, as you smile, we were already there in the forefront. What they see is what they'll be, real men given real time. Anthony, I'll start with you with your 1 minute closing, sir.
I truly believe that mentoring has got to be the cornerstone of our world today. I think it's so important for us to reach back to our kids and give them a pathway to follow. You can have vision without action, which is just daydreaming. You can have action without vision, which is typically a nightmare. So we want our kids to learn how to dream, and I think we can provide that for them if we do the right things in front of them. It's so important for them to understand what life can offer and what life cannot offer. It's so important. We need to have them to, want to go after something as though their life depended on it, because it really does. For those of us who look at this as a passive thing that we do from time to time, it is not. It is not. What you see will determine, what they see will determine their day. What they speak will determine their dream. What they breathe them and believe them. In other words, their dreams, in other words. So we got to make sure that our kids are understanding what their dreams are all about. what the goals are all about, and turning those dreams and goals into reality so they can live a more prosperous life. Our world is depending on how we are functioning economically, socially, so that we can create a better world, not just here in the United States of America, but across this whole entire globe. We need to do whatever we can to make sure that our mentoring process is preparing our kids for the future so that we can have a more prosperous, a more stronger nation, a strong economy, a strong family in reference to the things that we're doing today. We have to do this. It's not something that should be second nature. It is our job and it is our duty.
Thank you very much. Dr. Brown, you have the same 1 minute as Anthony Sampson. Thank you, Anthony.
I'll start by thanking Anthony as well. Well stated, sir.
Well said.
At one point, I'll just reiterate, this is important. This is not just something to do to spend time. Mentoring is just very important for our youth, but I believe mentoring is important even through adulthood. In fact, I look at mentoring as a way to teach, but also in teaching, you learn yourself. For example, our organization in Beaumont just recently set up a Collegiate 100 unit. And the Collegiate 100's Lamar University students set up a training program for the 100 Black Men organization so that we could learn better as an organization how to best use social media in our communication. So we're mentors of the students, but they were in that particular case serving as mentors for the 100 Black Men of Greater Beaumont. I can also remember throughout my youth and even through adulthood, mentors who've been part of my life, and I'm thankful for it. But my parents, of course, but also my coaches that I encountered. Coach Britton, when I was in high school, L.C. Anderson High School, he and his wife were mentors. My pastors that I've been around, and I've served as, and others that I've been a colleague. When I was at the University of Texas, also working on the doctorate, I had positive mentors working through that doctoral experience. Now, as a mentor myself for adults, I'm so proud whenever someone who has worked under my leadership has been promoted to become superintendent himself or herself. And we've maintained connection certainly for many years even after that. So this is important. I think whatever we can do as an organization to continue doing as well as we're doing, but also encouraging other clubs clubs across the 100 to build upon the positive things that they've accomplished. But don't stop there. Continue to do a better job because this is really important. Thank you.
The thing about mentoring is that we've always had some form of mentoring. Generally, it was informal. It was a way to transfer knowledge from one generation to the next, or from one group of people to another. That was a matter of survival, a matter of advancement, and it extends not only beyond us as humans, and it's observable in the animal kingdom as well. So long before formal education, we had to transfer knowledge and skills in an accurate and reliable way. It's a manner that knowledge was useful and cumulative. It was not enough to learn and pass on, but we had to learn, we had to build and improve, and then we had to sharpen that knowledge as well. So that's what we're trying to do now. It was organic back then. We're trying to mimic that same idea. We're trying to improve the lives of our youth. And not only that, because we're so siloed as adults, there is a need for us to mentor each other as well, so that we can learn from each other's experiences. So in my mind, that's what mentoring is all about.
Your words are well stated and well heard by anyone that's listening throughout this country. Let me say to you, Anthony Sampson, let me say to you, Dr. Johnny Brown, let me say to you, Brother Daniel Williams, thank you very much for the day. And let me take the time to honor Chairman Thomas W. Doris Jr., our Vice Chair Albert E. Dotson Jr., Chairman Emeritus thank Mr. Dossman for his time, our board of directors, certainly our staff, and every member. When I say every member, that means our district representatives and all of the people who run programs, as well as every president in this great organization. As one might say, let's keep on keeping on. And as Rabindranath Tagore, poet essayist say, you cannot cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. So let's continue to mentor. Gentlemen and ladies and all, have a great day. And thank you for allowing us to be such a mentoring organization. Take care now.
Brothers, this has been a great chance for us to come together. Thank you for all of your input. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for rolling up your sleeves and working to make sure we've taken care of the business of the 100 Black Men of America. Want you to be safe wherever you are. And remember, this organization is great because of the sum total of its chapters. It's the work that you do in your communities that make the 100 Black Men of America great. So thank you for your input. Thank you for rolling up your sleeves and focusing on how we continue to build 100 Black Men of America. And with your continued input, no matter when and no matter how, but as long as you are focused on this organization, we're going to continue to grow. Be safe, continue to do the great things that you're doing in your community, and know that if you need me or you need your world headquarters, we're right here for you. Thank you, and continue to take care of the young people, take care of our communities, and making sure we have healthy and safe communities, and more importantly, making sure that you're focused on the future of our communities for the future of America.